for 4 minutes. My name's Michelle O'Connor. I'm going to be your host and guide throughout the day. Thanks all for coming here despite the rain. I know I myself tend to hide when it rains, so thank you for braving it. Our first panel, I'm going to invite them to come in if they are ready. George, will you go find our panelists? Thanks. Oh, thank you. Anyway, today we have quite an exciting afternoon of programming. Agentic, proof of human in the loop is a trending buzzword theme that we all hear about quite often. And in curating the day, kind of one of the goals was to make it relatable for people that are delivering across this space of what this means, how it impacts the agentic side, the proof of human side, and then people that are enabling that for the end user. So that's the goal of today. If you have questions, please save them till the end of the panel. And then at our social network hour, we'll be able to connect more. Thank you.
You sit here.
You sit here?
Yeah, you will sit here.
Oh, I sit here. Match here.
Yeah.
I actually.
Match your face.
Yeah, I actually did a haircut to match my photo.
Check. Hello.
Hey.
Hey guys. A lot of recognizable faces. Thank you for showing up on a rainy afternoon. Sorry about that, but it's not my fault. I don't control weather. So we are here gathered to talk about agentic payments, and we have an amazing crew of people to talk about it specifically. It would be really nice if all of you guys can give an intro. I'll give a little bit about myself. I'm Pranav. I've been working in agentic payments for the last 8 months, been in Web3 for the last 7 years, and with the internet for the last 10. And for the last 6 months, I've seen there is a big flow of people trying to see if the first real case of crypto could be internet payments. And we have a lot of people working towards that. And this specific panel is to talk about what is hype, what is reality, what we are seeing right now is true in agentic payments, and how they are being done using X402, and what is fag and not to be listened to, including the meme coins and everything around it. So I hope you guys are excited. I will let you guys start and give a small introduction about yourself, your journey, and what have you guys been doing in the agentic payment space.
All right, I'll start it. My name is Vicky. I was a head of data science for Oracle from 2021 to 2024. Before that, I worked in AI machine learning space in Microsoft and Capital One. So I view that it's a cool space to work on. Is the between AI agent and stablecoin. So in the end of last year, we start work on a project named BlockRun.ai. We launched in January. Within 3-4 months, we get a good attraction. I think we have the strong mission as a let AI agent using stablecoin, particular USDC as a payment rail. So that's the goal.
Can you tell me, Vicky, how many people are in your team?
So BlockRun is a significant company. We have one human, that's me, and we have AI agent Sam, AI agent Emily, AI agent Tom, and so on. So yeah, daily consumption, we using 100 million tokens. I think we're pretty big team.
Okay, Kevin, how many people does Coinbase have?
Well, token size is the new head count, so I love that framing. But yeah, I guess quick intro from my end. My name's Kevin LeFew. I'm with the Coinbase developer platform. So we build the tools that make it easy to integrate stablecoins, wallets, payments into consumer applications. I'm one of the co-authors of X402. I was at Replit before Coinbase, had kind of deep experience in agentic systems and tool calling. And I'm really excited to chat about everything we're seeing in this ecosystem today with some of the great panelists here.
Hi, everyone. My name's Todd Chapman. I'm one of the co-founders of One Shot API. I'm here with my co-founder, Charlie, who's in the audience. Hopefully, some of you come and visit us after the panel and discuss some of this stuff. My background is actually in aerospace engineering. I did a PhD in that and then decided to go into crypto. Never worked for an aerospace contractor. I've been working in crypto ever since. At One Shot API, we build high-performance, programmable relaying infrastructure. We just launched a great integration with OKX Wallet, so we were super happy about that this week. And we're doing a lot of experiments in what does it look like for humans to give agents budgets? How can a normie do that? We really focus on the normie aspect of agent payments. Somebody who doesn't know what a terminal is afraid of the terminal. How can somebody like that leverage crypto and give agents a wallet? I'm very interested in this space from the perspective of small businesses. My brother runs a small business. I hope we get into that kind of a topic later on in the talk. And that's it for me for right now.
Okay, amazing. So we have a really good crew to talk about agentic payments and why should they happen with stablecoins. Anderson Howard's very recently talked about, agentic payments or the payments on the internet where agents are paying agents is gonna happen through the protocols that are being built right now. Brian Armstrong also believes that X402 is the way to lead forward for payments on the internet where agent and agent, if they interact, it will be through crypto. And even Jeremy Allaire believes that the internet's native currency is USDC. My question to all the three of you guys is, do you guys think with X402 MPP, are we making it over engineering, which is one of the biggest problems of crypto? Or do you guys think there is some real underneath benefit of agents to use stablecoins and wallets over a agentic card, for example, over fiat rails, for example, over Chase launching a gateway for agents, for example? Where do you see the first real use case over FAG? And maybe we can start from you, Todd.
Okay, so we just wrapped up a demo video with some collaborators at NameFi, and I just want to say buying stuff with stablecoins over X402 is superior in every way to paying with a credit card. It's just better in every single way possible. And so we showed having the Replit coding agent buy its own domain name and then set up its own DNS records. So it basically bootstrapped its own like fake business on our demo. That was superior in every way to the legacy payment rails. But nevertheless, the sticking point, like really the sticking point right now to letting an agent bootstrap its own company for you or like operate the business for you was still, I had to go and on-ramp into USDC from my Wells Fargo bank account. That part still sucks. I don't know what to do. X402 doesn't fix that. I don't know what to do about that. But on-ramping, I still think could be a showstopper for some people.
Yeah, I mean, on-ramping is definitely critical. And just to level set around Pranav's question, which is like, is X402 going to provide a superior UX? The answer to that is definitely yes. And I'd love to kind of go into some of the key problems that we solve from a language model or agent UX perspective. The first main problem that X402 solves is tool usage. So traditionally, when you want to design a language model that can do interface, outside of its own internal model data, search the web, generate videos, spin up a virtual browser, et cetera, you need to hard code each individual tool call, and really a developer needs to do that. And to do that, they need to go to an API key dashboard, put a credit card in, derive an API key, then go back to the model. We think that is a lot of human loop friction, and the goal of X402 is to remove that friction by replacing the authorization of the API key into a paradigm where the micropayment is the authorization itself. So this is a big unlock, because now agents can naturally discover, they can reason about, and they can pay for tools without needing a developer or human to configure the API key at the system level for the language model. What this also enables is economic reasoning. So if you give a language model an API key, it knows that it can use the API key, but it doesn't know how much it costs. So it'll just spam it and retry it Doesn't matter if it's a $1 tool call or a $100 tool call. It just knows that it can use it. It can retry it. We actually need language models to start thinking in economic terms, right? Money is the alignment signal that coordinates the global economy. It should be a first-class alignment scaler within agentic reasoning as well. And so with X402, every time an agent makes a request on the web, if it's 402 gated, it gets a 402 response code with pricing information. That pricing information gets embedded into the context window of the language model, and it enables it to start reasoning about marginal costs, economic trade-offs, and then also qualitative trade-offs with the API itself. And so what we want to do is we want to abstract kind of even the tool selection to the agent through internet native protocols like X402. The other area where I think the UX is superior is enabling agents to both earn and spend in a single runtime. So yes, we can give an agent an API key and it can spend with a credit card. That's great, but it's really difficult to spin up an agent that actually earns with traditional banking rails. You need a human to spin up a bank account. That bank account needs to be, under the human's name attached to their credit score. Someone needs to wire transfer, ACH transfer money to that bank account. That can take days. The agent then needs to basically pretend to be the human, navigate a web browser, operate the bank account, reconcile the difference between credit spending, what's in the bank account. All of that's just context bloat. It's built for kind of a non-agentic web where the wallet primitive, which is just public key cryptography, right, enables agents to both spend and earn in a single runtime, thus enabling these autonomous loops where agents can go, they can find ways to monetize using their superior reasoning capabilities. And then they can spend what they earn on increasing their compute footprint, on retrieving more data, real-time context to help them problem solve. And so there's a lot of really interesting research happening around autonomous agents and autonomous agent frameworks with this wallet construct powering the ability for agents to earn and spend in a single unified runtime.
Okay. So as a BlockRun is a tiny company, things just have one human me. So when we launch it in January, as we allow user to using USDC to buy LM, people push back, say, why not using credit card? I think that's a fair statement. Credit card works perfect for so many years, and people have a perks on top as well. And then February, we see that OpenCrawl come out. So quickly we launch a product, Core Router, which is a open source X402 USDC payment to allow people to do smart routing to using LM on OpenCrawl. The benefits is using X402 is so straightforward in that situation because we can be able to open source it compared to Open Router because they do server-side optimization. When you do server-side optimization, is a black box for you. You don't know that they route you to a good model or cheaper model or something like that. But we are open source. You can see the whole logic, how we route you. So it gives you the confidence how the routing happen, and we can do tons of the optimization on your machine because we do token compression. We do reduce context when you send a query from your OpenCrawl to the server for the modeling side because everyone use OpenCrawl know that they bundle a lot for the system log and the context before. So that's why people see that the token consumption is huge. So even we route to the same model compared to you do by yourself, we see that 20 to 40% of save because we do the client side optimization because X402 allow us to do a lot of open source stuff. And then we also give you a smart routing logic with your server, with your client side. You can change it, and if you like it or you don't like it, then so people come and say they want a routing based on Chinese language, Japanese language, Russian or other language. We can be able to provide. That's the advantage on the open source and the routing side. On top of that is save people a lot of effort to pair together the API key from different model provider. Think about OpenAI, Anthropic, and all others. You have to provide every key into OpenCrawl rather than you can just install in us. What do? You just install as a plugin, then tab USDC, then you can be able to use it. is a huge privacy security benefits because you limit the risk how much it could damage you because if open crawl, everyone know that because it's open source, so it's not 100% secure. And then if something goes on, your API leak, then maybe people spend $10,000 on your name. But with our solution, you just tap USDC, you give $10, the max situation, you just lost that $10. You will not be able to have more damage accordingly. And it's privacy preserving because with the credit card, you actually share all the privacy information about your identity. With this setting, you just, we even don't know who you are. So you fully have the privacy, identity privacy in this consideration. So in February, we won Circle Hackathon for AI agent payment. And then also we serve 1 million API call per month at the moment. And we just accepted by Coinbase as a base batch, as an incubator.
Okay, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Kevin, you specifically mentioned these 4 things that an agent can be superior with if they do X402. But I'm talking more like in real businesses, right? The world of crypto people generally have a wallet. They send USDC to each other and they can do payments. But do you expect real businesses like Google Cloud? Let's say tomorrow I spin up an agent and I wanted to buy me some compute on the internet. Do you expect Google Cloud in the future to accept USDC, be a seller on X402 and sell cloud services? Is that the idea? Are you having any conversation with any top sellers of any of these compute models or anything around like top businesses doing that? Is there any adoption currently in terms of mainstream where agentic sellers will be Google and all these people will be onboarding to X402 and would accept money in stable coins? That's the biggest question. And I think that's what Todd was also alluding to, like on ramp to USDC. That's the toughest part.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. Look, I mean, I think we'd love for every single major cloud provider to accept USDC. There are obvious benefits to stable coins as an internet native payment mechanism. But broadly, every hyperscaler is very interested in X402. And X402, it's a word with a lot of buzz around it. All it is a standard for the request response cycle pattern of anyone who wants to access a web resource in exchange for a payment. So it's not just limited to stablecoins. It can be, there can be tokenized credit card intents. Obviously, stablecoins, we've seen a lot of traction on kind of smaller transactions that are sub 30 cents because credit cards can't fulfill those types of transactions. But I mean, look, broadly, companies like Cloudflare integrated X402 into Mdash, their WordPress competitor. And I think what's really interesting about Mdash is all of these cloud companies are thinking about like, how do we monetize in the face of agentic adversarial automation? With Mdash, I could say I have a blog. If a human views it, according to Cloudflare's bot score, the human can view it for free. If a bot wants to scrape it, they have to pay. And a lot of the economics of the internet are shifting with the rise of this adversarial automation. Companies like World are building great solutions too. But to answer your question, we definitely, I mean, I can envision a future where cloud providers accept stable coins in addition to credit cards. And I think, in that kind of environment, the consumer wins and the provider wins because they're paying less interchange fees. Although credit cards do have, right, what does a credit card do? It extends credit to a user and protects them against chargeback risk. So for certain use cases like the fulfillment of physical goods, consumers want chargeback protection. They don't need instant finality. Instant finality works well for digital services, but like if I bought a t-shirt, I want to authorize $10 and then, once the t-shirt comes, make sure that it came, I got what I ordered. So like there'll be use cases for all different types of payment mechanisms. Credit's obviously an important part of the economy, but I think, the instant finality of stablecoins are going to be very suitable for, cloud and digitally native types of resources.
Okay, that's super fair. We can expect something like that in the future. There is this concept that micropayments cannot happen on the internet, and X402 is a way to enable that. So instead of buying subscriptions of Medium, for example, for $20, you can take a microtransaction to view an article. And that's a very big unlock. And in a way, you guys are sort of envisioning subscription as a model, but more than that now, this micropayment as one of the other business models to make something successful. That's
Yeah.
super, super interesting.
And just to add to that, like there are unit economics for every single business. Subscriptions, right? It's kind of the gym membership thing. Like we want you to sign up, but we hope you never come. And that might be a predominant consumer model, but underlying every consumer model is a series of APIs that have unit economic costs, and those I think map very cleanly to internet native payments.
Yeah, that's super fair. Every technology has a break free moment. Twitter's breakthrough free moment was when the plane landed on Hudson River and people started talking about it before the news could. That was when we thought that Twitter is the real time application for people to talk about it. Reddit's maybe real time moment is happening now when ChatGPT is taking all of its information from it, so on and so forth. Every technology has a break free moment. According to the three of you, X402 and agentic payment, what is the break free moment for this particular technology? When do you think we will hit mass? When do you guys think, agentic A2A payments will happen through stablecoins?
Yeah, I mean, look, and I'll
Oh,
pass
go ahead.
Yeah. I think we've already hit it. We've had awesome growth, right? I mean, the protocol has been live for 10 months. We've done over 160 million transactions. We've already broken through. I mean, the fact that everyone here is a testament to the mind share that we've gotten around HTTP native payments. And so we're at the early innings, but I think there's a recognition across the industry, across X, across the memosphere, that this is going to be an important foundational technology for payments in the future.
I actually think that this is aligned very well with the agent framework. I think because January or when OpenCrawl come out, actually really triggered this based on right now what I see in block run. I think with the agent capability grow and the foundation model grow, you will see more and more. I think that's right now. It actually started in late 2025. Anthropic Ops 4.5. I think that's the aha moment for me. You actually can see that they can have the capability core API by themselves if you share the key with them. I think that's the changing moment for me. Then OpenCrawl, then more and more different models and different agent framework actually will bring significant growth in my view.
So to me, the real elbow curve in like how all this affects the US and the global economy is going to be when you're small businesses in the middle of nowhere, like they don't hire secretaries anymore. They set up Claude Desktop, and that's the secretary for the business now. And I bring this one up because my brother runs he runs an irrigation business, and they have very thin margins. He's trying to avoid hiring a secretary for the office right now. And I'm like, look, we can do this with Claude Desktop now. And it can handle, ranchers calling in mad that something broke, answer the phone call as if it was a human. They're never going to know it's a human. And then whether it uses X402 or not is like a different question, but it could handle the billing form. It can handle the payroll form. Like this, when it gets discovered by the rest of the country, that to me is more impactful than like, well, the hyperscalers using X402 or not. Like that changes how culture works in your country when small and medium businesses are actually using agents to make their life easier in their business. But the showstopper right now is that even Claude Desktop, like we all live in like tech psychosis here in the Bay Area. Like to us, it's all this stuff makes sense. But people who live in South Texas, this does not make, like this is nonsense. None of this means anything to me, right? Like Claude Desktop means nothing to me as somebody who lives in a flyover state. So we're missing like the Shopify, but for setting up the agent to actually do random bullshit for me in my small and medium business. And then whether or not it ends up using stable coins or not, stable coins would be the superior form for you to transact for small or large amounts for your small business if I can get the money out of my bank account into the stable coin. So like I still keep coming back to that one because I've sat down with normies to onboard them into our payment app. And once I can get them in there, like there's no problem. Like you can hide the crypto. You can hide the crypto now. You have no idea there's crypto in the app. But you can't hide the bank spending 30 minutes and then giving up connecting the bank to get the stablecoin. That part really sucks right now. I don't know what to do about it. That to me is still a regulatory problem.
Well, I can actually add some color to that. So that's obviously an area that we're very focused on, which is the on-ramping and off-ramping of crypto. And at Coinbase, we want to make it as seamless as a user experience as possible. So we have a tool called Coinbase On-Ramp, which you can integrate headlessly or invisibly into an application so that a user can just simply use Apple Pay under $600, which is, I think, the federal limit, to bring cash into an application flow. So that's one great solution. I mean, I think the solution is going to be like, it's Apple Pay is dominant. We have to integrate with Apple Pay. So,
well, so it's not, I'm not trying to pick on Coinbase really. Like the Coinbase part works well, but I got to connect. If I have a local bank, okay, like not Chase, not Wells Fargo, because like I live in a town with like literally 10,000 people and it's 30 miles to the next town, I probably have like a local bank. And that thing is like they're running an IBM 380 probably in the back. Well, okay, so I need to connect that bank now to Coinbase to access my US dollars. And then it takes like a week for it to clear. And that's not even a Coinbase problem, right?
With ACH.
Yeah, right. So that to me could put the kibosh on the whole thing, right? Is there's just like with the exit for people trying to get ETH out of the validators, right? And there was like a huge queue that backed up. You have that problem with ACH into stablecoins right now.
So
Yeah, and that's where I think you can, for consumers, they'll use credit cards to on-ramp into stablecoin.
This
They
is
don't,
true.
they
Yep.
won't even know they're doing. They just looks like they're adding credits to their account or their application, and then stablecoins will be the unit of account with instant finality and value transfer.
I think for the fiat to stablecoin, the route has been the problem since the day one stablecoin in actually 2018-19, right? Because that's the time when USDC started. I think given that the Trump administration are more with the Genius Act and other, I think that this will be on the agenda to be solvable. I actually worry a little bit more about the other problem. When Pinar was why we didn't, or we say when is the huge, we see the massive growth. I think right now, majority of the world still think Anthropic model is too expensive, because they cannot afford like a massive, like a $100, $200 per month plan. So maybe also like the whole China was banned by Anthropic. So they are stuck with the cheaper model offered by Chinese company. I'm not saying they are really bad, but they are not as capable as Anthropic. Everyone know that. So the two core or other function are not very capable. So I think that's why majority of world are not really be able to experience what we have at the moment with capability wise, how agent can really achieve, because that's actually a premium, a luxury right now we can be able to use.
Yeah, and local models are really important, right? I mean, I got brought into crypto, like I wanted to kind of avoid the Orwellian future. And Ahmad, who's the founder of Stable Diffusion, has a great line. And in crypto, we say, not your keys, not your coin, which means if the user custodies the private key, they can store it in their brain, they can store it in a wallet, then they have access to those funds. No one can take that away as long as you have an internet connection. The same, there's kind of an analogy with language models, which is like, not your model or not your model memory, like not your memory. Like, and as we start to outsource all these capabilities to language models, it is going to be important for humans to figure out, okay, what do I own? What's like going to go to Anthropic? But open source models offer a pathway for local inference where you can have much more control over like the tonal style of the language model, the specific tool calls, the reasoning. And I'm very interested in local language model deployments, as these become extensions of our brain. We want to hold those as close to us as the individual as possible, in my opinion.
yeah, very very interesting, Todd. What you mentioned about your brother running a small business and the biggest problem is on ramp with the banks. I feel then the aha moment, if the Clarity Act passes in the future, if banks start offering stablecoin as a service, then he can directly onboard it through that, and then maybe agentic payments could be a big thing. But right now, as we all know, or as some of us might know, that banks are sort of blocking it, or there is some big bureaucracy around it. If that happens, then do you guys think the Clarity Act and the regulatory clearance on stable coins for banks could make agentic payments on the internet make a big flow?
Yeah, I mean, look, every single major bank is looking at stablecoin, and that's happening. That's the reality, and you can search this on the internet, and you can find all kinds of workflows that are happening. The Clarity Act's about can consumers earn yield on stablecoins? Because if you put money in a bank account, they lend your money, you get like 0.05% interest. Really, with a stablecoin, you have almost this tokenized treasury bill in some ways, so that yield can flow directly to the consumer. So, overall, it's a win if consumers can earn more yield on their dollars. And that's the debate. But that's the Clarity specific debate. But the first part of your
That could
question,
enable stable coins.
yeah, like every bank is looking at stablecoins. They recognize the efficiency increase for settlement time, right? Like everyone knows ACH and wire transfers stink. It's not a good experience, and stablecoins can enable faster settlement, faster trading of assets, and increase yield. So everyone's interested in it for those core reasons. It's just I think larger institutions are like slower to move, but they're definitely moving.
Okay, I have one specific question for each of you, and then we can open it up to everyone. I can start with you, Vicky. Uh, so as you mentioned, probably the open router that you launched was probably one of the most successful libraries or open source projects built on OpenClaw, correct? And one of the best things about it is that it can make you save tokens. If you use Anthropic right now, in the past you had to pay $100, but now you have to interact with the API key, and that can be somewhere around $500 to $10,000. Do you think cost saving using X402 and agentic payment is the reason for Open Router's success, or is there more to it?
Oh, you ask about if the cost saving is the reason per router or product get a success. I think it first get a really hypo because people recognize that we solve this pain point, and also on top of that we offer free models like so many open source model people can host on-prem, or we do a cloud-based model for them, then they don't need to pay anything. In that way, developing country places, they even cannot afford Anthropic. They can using open source model without a hosting. I think that's also the problem we are solving to give free models. But I think the nice thing about X402 is really give AI agent the capability to pay and have a multi-model like environment, because you are not stuck with the subscription as Kevin mentioned, because right now every day we see a new model come out, no matter music, image generation or coding capability. You don't have to managing any subscription. That's a big advantage, because you can test anything offered to you, just USDC. That's where people think that this is actually a game changer.
And then also the agents can reason about model selection themselves, right? Like that's another area of human in the loop that we can automate. Like, do we want, I mean, in many cases, the developer wants to pick the specific model, but like a better system might be an agent picking the model for the task. And, that gets enabled by tools like OpenRouter.
Yeah, there was a big thing about like Cursor using Quen in the background and charging people money.
Oh, really?
It was a big thing about it, and they were like hiding from it. And then, so this is a big breakthrough in that. And
Yeah.
not having subscriptions and paying per query is a big unlock for that.
Yeah.
Kevin, I have a little more spicier for you. Let me know if you can answer, or it's a part of the media training. Do you think Stripe is eating Coinbase's lunch? Because let me explain. Stripe saw Coinbase is doing great and they sort of launched MPP in force of X402. They launched Tempo, which is similar to Base, and they are also targeting or going for the same market with agentic payments. And given that we don't have cameras, you cannot say, yeah, it's an ecosystem and it's good for everyone. Tell me.
Before you answer, let me answer one thing. Right now on Stripe MPP, the whole MPP daily consumption, the dollar amount is less than block run, just one thing on X402.
Yeah, and
Okay, you can go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the framing's totally wrong. Stripe's a great partner to Coinbase, and like every large corporation competes with some companies in some areas and partners in others. Stripe's part of the X402 Foundation. Stripe has X402 in their documentation. MPP has some differences in the semantics for the header requests for 402 payments. I think ultimately they're pretty similar projects, and I think for standardization of payments over HTTP, this needs to be something that's open source, that's driven with broad industry collaboration and input for this to really standardize. And so that's the goal of X402. Stripe's a key partner in that initiative. So we're very friendly with Stripe. I think that there's like a wider like media narrative that there's this like big competition. I think overall we all want to drive the growth of build better solutions for our consumers and our users, and that's the direction that we'll go towards jointly.
Okay. You should
We're
have
partner.
said,
We are. I mean, Stripe supports X402. They're our partner in this. So
Come on.
that's the framing. I think people should look at
Okay.
this through the lens of.
Kevin, thank you for the truthful answer. Todd, what's one business that you think would get disrupted with X402? What's one business, that would come to you and you could make their thing a paper query that you think is on the verge of getting disrupted and eaten the lunch up?
Well, I mean, for a lot of businesses, it has nothing to do with X402. Like a lot of jobs are just like RIP, right? Like I had a friend that had like a great website design business for like a long time, like RIP website design businesses. Like those, I will never hire one again because I can do it in 20 minutes with Google Stitch and then Claude Kurt. Like those businesses are RIP. I don't see X402 necessarily being the business killer, other than maybe killing credit cards or killing traditional Visa, rails, those kinds of things. Might kill that 100%. Because like I said, once I'm into crypto, everything I've done with it thus far with, what Charlie are doing at One Shot API, like it's just a clearly superior payment method. So I don't know, it might not be like a great, exciting answer for you, but I don't see X402 being the business killer. It's like more like steroids for your business. But agentic stuff, once it gets easier for normies to understand what it can do for them, like it's going to be like.
For which businesses could it be a steroid?
Small and medium businesses are going to be able to, it's going to change their life. Like I can see just the $200 a month Claude desktop changing my brother's life. If I can sit down with him for a weekend and get him on it, like it will literally change his life. It'll save his marriage, change his life. But whether it uses X402 or not is a different question.
Yeah, and it's going to need external tool calls either way, right?
Yes.
And either you can have, your brother, go through these API key dashboards and configure it, or he can just do an Apple Pay deposit, and the agent can handle all of that for him.
And but that'll be steroids for the Claude desktop, right? Like that's making
exactly.
it just extra more useful, spending less tokens, right?
Okay, fair. Does this mean 10 minutes left? Yeah, okay. All right, I'll rather open it up to everyone. If you guys have questions, these people can go for it.
MCP hat, ask away. I love your hat, by the way. That's a cool hat.
That big of MCP fan, but I have one for Kevin about support of X402 in this, like natively support native support of X402 in these clients like Cloud, Open Code, and all of those? Is there something like cooking, or they're not focusing on that?
I mean, I think we'd like to see X42 support across all major clients. There's a ton of people who will bring X42 tool discovery into Claude Code, and they get a lot of benefits from that because it enables tool discovery across the open web. So, the goal really is to build an open ecosystem, an open standard around this, similar to the MCP hat that you're wearing, and drive adoption of tool usage through native HTTP-driven discovery.
I had a thing for that because Charlie and I have been experimenting with this for X402 payments in things like OpenClaw, or even like the ChatGPT, the mobile app that, everybody uses the ChatGPT mobile app, right? But it doesn't have full tool usage capability. What you got is the web fetch. I was wanting to talk to you about it, but I hadn't seen you in a while to discuss with you what we were doing. You can make X402 work perfectly in ChatGPT without connecting MCP servers or anything. Just like dump in the correct prompt and teach it how to use the web fetch tool. All you need is a thin proxy. Somebody else hosts it. Maybe One Shot API hosts it. Or you can host it yourself on Cloudflare, something like that. But you can make X402 work perfect with some of these kind of constrained agentic environments through the web fetch tool. Everything has web fetch. Everything has web fetch. So if you can make it work with web fetch, then you've got X402 everywhere.
Yeah, and that's
So-
awesome.
So we already have a block run MCP available for Cloud Code. If you find in the GitHub, you install it, and you are enabled with it, then you tap USDC, you can be able to pay it.
We know you love MCPs, so.
But hey, I got a question for you. Like, I keep hearing that MCP is now out of style. Is that true or not? Like, Carpathy was saying, like, RIP MCP recently. He was saying, like, yeah, just use APIs now. Like, we don't need MCP anymore. Is that true, or is that?
MCP is very important because when we look at the Cloud Code source code, MCP was treated as the first citizen. That's where I will with you. I feel like MCP is not as straightforward as a skill. But when we look at the Cloud Code source code, that's where I realized that we could invest more there.
Yeah.
So the case for agentic commerce in X402 is huge. Everybody sees and sees that where that's going. When you look at TradFi normies' use of X402, do you have a business cases there other than obviously micropayments potentially? Do you see normies sort of using it in some way, whether it's email, getting micropayments in order to send, or reducing spam? Same thing with phone calls. Do you see a normie case for that?
Yes.
And if so, what are some use cases other than microtransactions?
Agent
That-
mail?
Yeah,
other
look.
than, content.
Like, people always ask about this, like, X402 is a standard for payments over HTTP. Like, normies don't care about HTTP. Only sickos like us in the room are focused on the semantics of internet communication protocols. But I think normies ultimately will use this. So the goal with X402 is to enable open web tool discovery. It's to prevent kind of these walled gardens of tools to emerge. And we think for the web to remain open and free, language models need to be able to access, reason about, and use tools freely. And I think that what will ultimately happen is, people will be paying for real-time data feeds. They might be paying, for context or for API actions behind the scenes. It's probably abstracted from the user, but it'll happen over HTTP ultimately.
Okay, we have time for one last.
An agent, there's a lot of great companies that are building in this space. Ampersand's obviously one of them, and Blockrun and One Shot. But there's also Agent Cache, which is just like a really easy MCP tool, lets you discover, pay for resources. Every new tool you give a language model, it's like a new superpower. It's a new feature. And so as more and more tools come online in the ecosystem, there's this compounding effect of new superpowers that your language model can have.
It's very interesting in Silicon Valley when people say that if you gotta sell to agents, and agents will discover agents and buy from them, right? And there'll be a whole market over there. Maybe Coinbase Bazaar is a approach towards that, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think agent to agent is possible. I think, what I think is more interesting in the near term is really language model to tool usage, because tool usage provides this deterministic response pattern for language models where they can get data that they know is real time and factual, and it's not like filtered through the language model, kind of probabilistic model. But in the future, you could imagine like a server is an agent, and so an agent might call another specialized agent to do a task, and then that's just going to compound and compound around, aligning users' intents. So that definitely probably will happen through the tool usage model as well.
Of the 160 million transactions that you've seen on X402 so far, any insight into like the size of the transaction, the use cases, or like even like the growing use case trend that you're seeing over the last,
Meme coin.
Yeah, no, we had kind of like an S curve where we had a huge amount of growth. It slowed down. Now it's picking back up again. The average transaction size for X42 last time I checked was 14 cents on the month and 30 cents on the 3-month time period. Yeah, that's really interesting because there's like a 30-cent transaction interchange fee for a lot of card providers. So it's showcasing that we're capturing this niche in the market that otherwise, wouldn't be possible with traditional payment rails. The use cases that we see are around tool usage, and so companies like Exa have recently integrated web search as an API tool, or browser based lets an agent spin up a virtual browser, pay for it, solve some tasks, navigate some UX for human. A lot of the use cases that we see really fall into two main buckets. The first are like creative buckets. So someone wants to pull the latest news about the San Francisco 49ers on a web search, chain that to a model. The model creates a prompt that gets fed to a video generation tool, right? Maybe it says, hey, I want it to be a reporter talking about the latest news. They post that. So we see a lot of use cases around creative media generation. And then the other bucket's trading. And so people that are pulling real-time market data, doing qualitative analysis, or kind of trying to implement language model-driven trading strategies. We see a lot of adoption there too. But they generally fall into either creative or financial use cases today.
Okay, thank you guys. Thank you for
Thanks, everyone.
We're going to take a short break between panels. There's beverages, restroom, coffees out front. And then a quick shout out, Tools and World are one of our hosts today. And you'll notice there's an orb. Next week is Liftoff, where Alex Banya and Sam Altman will be presenting. If you verify today, you will be put on the attendee list, and they're at waitlist capacity now. So we'll be back in about 10 minutes.
Great turnout. Full house today.
Your house,
We're in the house.
Is my microphone
see it.
on? Okay, great.
Great.
We're literally in Rodrigo's house. Rodrigo is also the CEO of Edgenode, and it's called the house. So thank you for hosting us.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having
us. Appreciate it. Thank you.
And thanks to Michelle for this wonderful event on this rainy afternoon. So my name is Trisha Wong. I'm the CEO of the Advanced AI Society, and we're an industry association for independently verifiable AI products. And we started this association because as agents are already outnumbering human beings, and enterprises are trying to figure out what their AI stack looks like. A lot of them are trying to say, well, which companies are going to give me that verifiable control over our stack? And so that's the gap that we fill, is that we are members, which Edgenode is one of them. We also have a few other members in the audience, is that there's a new, growing class of products called proof of control that offer the AI security. And so you'll hear from some of these companies, and that's what we're here to do today. So today we have two incredible panelists who are going to talk about, well, what does this new stack look like? We have Tawanda Mahere from Google. I'm not sorry, you were ex-Google, sorry, from World. He was like, what? That was my old job from World, who was a host of, our actual host of this event. So thank you. And then we have Rodrigo from Edgenode, who's also the CEO. And, one of the things that I think is really interesting, I was thinking about when Michelle asked me to moderate this panel, is I thought about, this topic of identity is so thorny, and it's something that we've kind of just like put, on pause for a while for the first couple decades of the internet. Does anyone remember that cartoon from the New York Times with that dog that says like, nobody knows you're a dog on the internet? Some of you or us may not be old enough, but like, who knows of that? Just so I have context. Okay, so for all the people who don't remember, there was this really well-known cartoon, and it like really captured
the times. Do you both know this cartoon? Okay, good. At least my panelists do. And the cartoon is literally a dog on the computer. And then this headline, the subtitle of the cartoon is like, on the internet, no one knows you're a dog. And why is this funny? It was funny because it was true. It really reflected the early design of the internet. There were many intentional design decisions that really said, let's just put identity on pause because we're going to prioritize other decisions. Like TCP/IP really prioritizes, where your location is, not who you are. That transport, information is not, programmed in there. And so this is why we have to have this panel, because we can't put it on pause anymore. Is that early on, we have this approach to digital identity that we've been saying, okay, we're going to patch it every time we come across an identity problem. But that was never a real solution. And now with agents outnumbering people, agents have broken all of our patches. And we don't, at least the members of this panel, we do not think the rest of the world has realized this yet. So today, what we're gonna do is talk about why is this so important? Why, and we have to understand the foundations of what exactly isn't broken and why is this new fix really gonna be the solution that finally gets to the foundation of something that we put on pause for a while. And so just to frame us up, I saw a really interesting stat before I came here, which is that now machine identities outnumber, in the typical enterprise, outnumber humans 82-1. But the more interesting part is that only 22% of organizations treat agents as independent identities. And this really speaks to this. We've already had this need before. I would love to open up the quick story that Tuan, I would love for you to comment on, which is that I think I spoke to some of you already know this. Arup is an engineering firm. And many of you remember from 2024, a human got on a Zoom call with their CFO and their rest of their colleagues, and they all made a decision to make a transaction of $25 million over 15 transactions. And it turned out all of them were fake, all of the people on the Zoom call. And $25 million was transferred and boom, gone, right, for this large global engineering firm. And it really reveals three issues of our current internet, which is the way we deal with identity, which is that one, it was centralized. One, it was a static approach to identity with an ongoing verification. And the third, it was that it relied on human trust, not, so that was the one employee. And so to wonder why this story, it's not, it's a pre-agent story, but can you tell us what happens now in the agent world? What does this story mean and why do we need this kind of solution?
Yeah, thanks so much for that. When you think about how you would solve the problem of being on a video call with someone and wanting to know if you're speaking to a real human or the specific human who you think you're talking to, some of the ways that you'd be able to answer that question would be maybe one of three options of identity. One is something that they own, something that they know, or something that they really are. That's a basic framework for identity. What do I mean by that? Something that they know, do they have a password or is there knowledge-based authentication where you can type in something and say, oh, okay, like what was the address that you grew up on? But now AI capabilities make it easier to just quickly find information about people to answer these questions in real time. The second option might be something that you have. So you have a UB key maybe that you plug into your device to prove, okay, I am here, but that doesn't mean that it's really you. There could be someone who's taken hold of that piece of hardware and is sticking it in and pretending to be you. And then there's the third one, something that you are. That sounds a little bit amorphous, but what it really means is some version of biometrics, your face. Because someone's looking at your face or potentially your eye, just to be able to say, okay, there's something unique about this person, this particular one. And so the other two methods don't really work effectively at scale because of the challenges that I described. But in this world of AI, one of the things that we at World ID hear more and more from enterprises is that the ability to discern on video calls what's real and what's fake is increasingly difficult. And many people just rely on their own gut check and say, well, this looks like the person who I know, but maybe they don't sound the same, or maybe there are these tests where you ask someone to put their finger on their nose, or if, like some of us have heard about the quote-unquote North Korea capture more recently. These are things that are attempts to solve this problem. And what we've done with World ID is to say, instead of trying to use these deep fake detection capabilities that use inference on the frames that are coming in, why not really go back to creating a hardware-based root of trust, where every single human can be able to use hardware to take a photo of their face and their iris, but then hold that in privacy-preserving, like self-custody on their own device. And then when the moment requires it, if they would like to prove that it's really them on a call, they can create a zero-knowledge proof to confirm it's really me, and then conduct a liveness selfie in order to do that verification, to say, hey, it's really me.
Wait,
And-
so can you walk us through, like, in the Arup situation, what would have been different had they already had this implemented? You're mentioning zero knowledge proof and this like proof of aliveness, but can you just walk us through what that would have looked like?
Sure.
Yeah.
So let's say the CFO in this case would have gone to an orb one time in his life, like some of you have done today, and they'd have been able to enroll in World ID and to be able to get a credential issued to them, which we call a World ID. That's a proof of human credential, proving that they're a unique human. That's all. They're able to then, in the moment when they're on a video call, use our product, what we call Deep Face, to be able to conduct a liveness selfie check against the orb verified image and against the frames. And so you kind of doing this three-way match to say the person who verified at the orb is the person who is live in front of me using a liveness selfie check using their World app. And is the same person who appears to be on this call based on the frames coming in from, in this case, Zoom. And so this is the way that you're able to have this hardware-based root of trust, that you're speaking to someone who really is the way that they appear. And so you're able to confirm that the pixels on the screen match that particular human, and that account, the specific account associated with the chief financial officer, has a very clear binding between that World ID and that account to say, hey, unless it's this person, you can't be sure that it's the chief security officer or the chief financial officer in this regard. So that's the product that we've been able to build, and this is what's available throughout our protocol for anyone who needs it. That's the solution.
Enterprise leaders should have this story top of mind. And I hope it's already in your sales deck. You're like, you don't want this to happen.
So this is being pulled from us. The use cases range from not just video conferencing, but wire transfers for signatures that are being made. It could be for creating an account at a bank or loans. And there's been this real draw to say, hey, can you help us figure this out? Because historically, you'd be able to authenticate that someone is an owner of an account, but you're not able to know that in this moment, this is the person who's there. And so we really believe real-time proof of presence is going to be fundamentally important to all online interactions in real time, like video calls.
We're going to come back to that last point about some of these use cases again. But I think what's interesting, because there's a lot of identity solutions, you know, at Advanced AI Society, we know identity has to be solved for, but there's going to be many solutions. And what's really unique about World's solution is that there's that hardware root of trust that makes it really unique. And so in terms of building out infrastructure, Rodrigo, you're not building out hardware, you're building out a different kind of infrastructure. So can you tell us about your infrastructure, and then what does it mean when you can't verify an agent on the other side, like their identity? What does that look like for you, and why is that so important to solve, and in terms of how you're solving it?
Yeah, so what we're building at Ampersand is it's a control plane for humans to put down policies, guardrails, and observability over when agents interact with the financial world. So when you give agents access to money. And so we are sort of being standards agnostic in our sense, because we want to create this sort of delightful and very usable human experience. Delight.
I love that word.
We
I
like the
just
word
wanna use it.
delight.
Yes, a delightful
Right.
interaction. Imagine that.
A delightful interaction. So
Humans.
right, because today a lot of this stuff is command line, and if you can imagine, like, if you think we envision a future where you'll have fleets or swarms of agents, and if you think like sheep, right, running around, and you need to collar everything, and so having it all in one place. A lot of these systems deal with disparate kind of dashboards and UIs and command line interfaces. So this is all kind of like bringing it in one place for you to navigate, observe, and control all of this and interact with these different standards. So in the case of reputation, the case of identity, there are standards that are emerging, like worlds, there's like web of trust, there's all kinds of different ones. We don't know which one is going to win and which one is going to be adopted, but we want to make it so that you have ability to select and utilize and interact with those as you're dealing with this agentic world when they're dealing with money, because you're going to need, if you're building an agent and you have an agent going out and purchasing things on the buy side, you might want to bind some identity verification to that agent on the one hand, and then on the sell side, you might want to bind identity verification to your agent that's earning money, so that when agents are out in the marketplace searching for agents that they're going to interact with and pay for it and purchase from, they can then have credentials associated with that. And so within Ampersand, you would have in kind of your policy engine is only interact with agents that have a world ID associated with the developer of that agent, or only interact with agents that have a reputation score on, an ERC 8004 reputation score above, 9.8 or whatever. Like, and these are rules that can be, you can have an infinite set of kind of the types of policies and controls you want to set on your agents. So
It sounds like it would be as easy as like booking.com when I'm like, I only want to look at hotels that people have rated,
Right.
8 or above.
or you have a slider and
Yeah.
you have your hotel budget and like, don't give me hotels like over $500.
So-
So
You use the metaphor of sheep, you're corralling these sheep in, but what happens when you have a black sheep or rogue sheep? Like what does Ampersand allow?
Right. Yeah, that's the hope, is that you prevent having a rogue sheep, right?
But we
And so-
can't, there will be, right? So what do you do ahead of time to do that preventative?
Yeah,
work?
I mean, you kind of, it's like putting a fence around the sheep that it can't jump over. Like
Even
that's
the black,
idea.
so you anticipate there are going to be black sheep.
Exactly. So similar to how kind of blockchains and Bitcoin was designed, is that you anticipate bad actors in the system, right? So you have like protection against at least 51% of the network going rogue. You kind of want to build these resilient systems ahead of time, anticipating knowing that there will be bad actors in the system. So yeah, you put up high fences and like do everything you can to prevent that.
I think that, in the last panel, they talked about how we need to be able to get everyday people to use this. What it sounds like when you're talking about a delightful agentic interaction, it gets us closer to that, because it means that, anyone without command line, if you're not having to write in there, you can actually just start to use sliders and have that UX to do the controls, right?
Yeah, and I was watching the prior panel, and there was a mention about people in the flyover states and like having the ability for them to interact. I forgot the analogy used, but it was a really great example of just being able to like quickly set this stuff up for people that aren't in like the Bay Area and like very tech advanced, but just having like simple one-click setups for agents to go out and do things. That'll be the moment that it really will affect more people.
Tony, you wanted to jump in, right? I can see you.
Very aligned
Yes.
with this thinking. We've seen a lot of demand from different platforms to answer the question, not just is this a human or a bot, which was very relevant a few years ago, but is this bot, or in this case, an agent, acting on behalf of a particular human? Is it acting on behalf of a human who we've signed off on? And so in the case where you want to be able to separate out you said black sheep and white sheep, or you could say sheep and goats, so just like the good agents versus the bad agents. You would need to know who is behind them. And you see where there are swarms, or maybe let's say a flock of agents that are out there, you need
Sheeps
to be
are the
able
new
to
metaphor.
maybe sheep are the new metaphor.
The flocks of sheep.
But you need to be able to identify them. So examples of where this ends up matching for a normie, as they was mentioning in the previous panel, would be social media. You look at these large online platforms that have voting, be it liking posts, making posts. If it's one person who's controlling 10,000 accounts in the form of, which have all been spun up by agents, that's a real problem. It means that when you see political posts or posts about financial asset, you're not able to gauge sentiment accurately. But World ID and Proof of Human just solve this in exactly the way you described. And so I think agents are really, the agent world is facilitated by this infrastructure. Absolutely.
Yeah, and then I'm curious, and from your perspective, you know, what's really unique, what I really love about the way that World is designed is that I actually think what you're saying is you're doing more. What if just correct me if I'm wrong, is that you're not only saying, you know, are you who you are, but are you actually unique? Are you unique? You know, it's not just a one-to-one check, right? It's like a one against everyone who you've verified so far. And is that right, or am I?
Absolutely.
Okay, can you
So-
help us understand what that means? Because that was really, for me, the turning point in my own understanding of World over the last few years. I was like, well, you know, I have to understand how each one of these products are different, but there's really no one else doing what you're doing, this part of one to many, right?
Absolutely. The way that the internet tried to solve this in the past was to say, okay, show us your email address. But you were mentioning Google. If one human being has 20 Gmail accounts, then Google still has this problem to think about how, okay, are we able to actually map that to a particular human? And when that person is creating accounts on YouTube, for example, giving themselves a lot of accounts, influencing our algorithm, or when we're trying to maintain credibility with advertisers, which is their fundamental business model, are we able to confirm with them that when we say that there were 100,000 views of this video, there were actually 100,000 humans who saw that? And so proof of human becomes really important with this uniqueness aspect to say, was that a human, yes or no? And the way that captcha answers it is different from saying, was that the same human as the one who created these 19 other accounts? And so being able to know that it's a human who's different from other humans is a fundamental importance. And so what you could say is, oh, well, then just submit your ID credentials. And you can say, okay, so if we see your ID, we know that name, address, date of birth, password, and all the details associated with that driver's license. But that's incredibly bad for privacy. What you would end up requiring is that there are centralized databases that contain people's personal information. And we strongly believe that you should never need to create any centralized database of people's personally identifiable information. And so the actual tech that we've invested the most in enables you to have several different databases that are spread out. And when you are able to, if you were to have information from just one of them, it would be useless. What you need is that all of them come together and be able to, in order to do this computation. And so it's with advancements like that you're able to make sure that in the worst case scenario, the security of everyone is guaranteed. But even then, all of the biometric data that you are able to hold on your device never leaves your device. You are the one who holds that in your own custody. And all that is needed is a zero knowledge proof to confirm this is a human, they're unique. And so
you don't hold it, neither does the company who built it, Tastio, right? Like no one holds it. It's
there is
completely decentralized.
Absolutely. There is no centralized database. So there's nothing for quote unquote us to hold. Tools for Humanity is a company that's building on this protocol. And so you on your device are the one who's in personal custody of this. And so we really believe that pushing the boundaries of privacy is what gives people the confidence to say, I can be on the internet and prove that I'm a unique human, or while not revealing my identity. You're not able, so I may be, you know, I'm not a dog on the internet, and you know I'm a human, but you know, you're not able to know which human I am. And so we really believe that the future of the internet is going to need this. And then all these agents or swarms of agents or flocks of agents will require themselves to show up identifying themselves as being belonging to some human.
I have an interesting anecdote, and maybe a little bit off, but this is a personal experience of dealing with the need for these identity systems. So the Node built the Graph protocol. We launched a token in 2021, and we went through a token sale. We had 25,000 people sign up, and they had to go through a KYC process. And that involved taking a selfie and uploading a picture of their ID. And so literally So the system would automatically pass through people, but there were manual flagged people that had to go through a human evaluation. So literally, and so we had 2 weeks and we had like an army of people, including myself, literally manually checking these things.
The job of a CEO.
And
sometimes.
I was doing operations at the time, but I'll tell you, people were clever. There were swarms of people from Russia, China, and they would do these passports that like had their photo in it, and it would be a picture of them, and like all the novel ways they tried to get around the system, because it was one person that wanted to submit 5 identifications, because the way it worked was every person that signed up for a token sale got a small allocation of tokens. It was limited. So if you're like, I want to get as many tokens as I can, I'm going to submit 10 identities, fake identities with my picture and a fake passport, and then I'm going to get an allocation for 10, and then I'm going to like hoard all these tokens for myself, and then like the token goes up and sell them. So there was literally hundreds of, you could tell it was the same person over and over, but like fake passport. It passed the check, it was a legit passport, but the picture was like photoshopped in. And that, it just shows you how it breaks down, like these attempts to even use these like KYC systems break down very easily with what are called Sybil attacks, which is like the same person submitting multiple
So
versions of
I'm
themselves.
curious then, Tony, because your previous employer was Google, and you worked on some of these KYC things, these solutions that Rodrigo was talking about. So I'm curious, like in terms of your journey, when you hear this story, we were stuck with this solution even in Web3, right? Like how did you come to this? What was your own personal experience in like working on something KYC to now? You're like decentralized identity.
I think the use case you described is part of the journey that I personally went through, where if you look at how Google has all of these different products, and they built the greatest and most global identity infrastructure in the world. Signing with Google is used by billions of people, and like signing with Facebook, Twitter, and are very much following that direction. But I was part of this payments platform that worked with, was receiving the payments and processing the payments for all of Alphabet's properties. And so the key question that we would say is, for example, that YouTube one, where if a government, we'll just use YouTube as an example, if a government wanted to evaluate whether there has been political advertising on YouTube that is biased or that has election interference from abroad, that's an identity question. So for example, if someone's buying a lot of ads in support of one candidate, and that candidate's getting a lot of traction and has a lot of support from Russia or Iran, how do you prove who owns that account?
Like same question as where you go buying tokens or buying ads,
Exactly
right?
that. And so we'd ask people to take photos of their driver's license and so on, but we saw this rise in just fake, counterfeit, but very, very sophisticated ads. And originally, even Google, a company that was AI first, would have manual reviewers of all of this, but they just became really, really good over the last few years as AI became capable. That doesn't work. But secondly, the privacy cost of that was just really high. From the legal liability perspective, Google didn't want to have this. And this is a problem that Twitter has as well, or like Facebook or any of the large platforms. We don't want to have these piles of this identity data or people's information. And so the real solution that we came up with was how can we enable people to have digital identity credentials? And so governments could issue them, but then you could hold them on your device. But then they didn't have the global scale or the privacy preserving properties of World. And so one of the things that I found particularly interesting about World ID was that not only was the project solving these problems, but actually it was walking the talk. So he was talking about Sybil resistance and being able to say, okay, we're going to use this protocol of World ID to distribute financial assets and have confidence that each human will only be able to claim these financial assets once is something that we have tested out and proven with the crypto token that we have been making available just to test and prove and sort of put our money where our mouth is to be able to say, if you're a human, you can claim this. And there have been multiple examples of trying to claim limited assets using this. So to strongly believe in that, and I think this is
Has it been broken so far or no? It's
So
been resistant against like any attacks.
one of the things that gives us so much confidence that this is the direction to go is we haven't been able to see anyone be able to successfully penetrate this. And just the reality about being able to have an approach that uses this very advanced cryptography, and it's very, very difficult for many reasons.
Which you
but
touch on, which is a one to multi, right? One to n.
one to multi. But if you think about any face-based solution, when you get to 1 billion people and people have twins or doppelgangers, or in certain ethnic groups, people may be seen by the technology to be the same. But when you move to an iris-based solution, you can really scale up to multiple billions of people, potentially 7, 8, 9, 10 billion people without any errors, and without any sort of duplication. So when you see that hardware standing there, it's a lot of effort to get there, and thus you're able to avoid.
Which is
any
why you're able to
errors.
get to the uniqueness.
Absolutely.
Which is what's unique about World.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I'm curious because in our previous panel, we talked about how far we've come in payments, right? Because agents, you literally, if you want your agents to be useful, they have to have a way to transact. And the current system is not built for that. So we heard about that. And so I'm curious from both of your points of view is where are we at with identity readiness? And in particular, how much is identity and payments? What's the crossover look like? Can you help us understand?
Payments problems are identity problems. If you look at an example like India, as soon as they were able to build Aadhaar, the universally available identity system, they were able to lay on top of that the United Universal Payments Interface, UPI. And basically now any person within in India who's able to show that they are unique and a particular human with their identity is able to do the same, is able to share in money, like transact with anyone else. We really believe that in a world of agents, we're able to leverage World ID and the World Protocol to tie together payments and identity. Agent Kit, as we've mentioned before, is the key product that we have shipped that enables you to associate an agent with yourself. But we've also got a whole financial wallet that enables you to extend that potentially to say, okay, I'm going to be able to delegate authority to my agent to pay using a payment instrument that I have. And so there's a lot of opportunity for many different ways for this to work. We're open to partnering with many different payments players in this regard through an open protocol. But we really believe that when you enable the identity problem to be solved, you're able to solve the payments problem, and you can lay on top of that the agents.
We'll hear about Agent Kit later in the next panel, and there's going to be a demo on that too. And I really love your quote and about that payment problems are identity problems, because this is the Gordian knot that we have to solve around payment, identity, security, integrity, portability, all of it is, wrapped together. And so
from our perspective in terms of the readiness, back to your readiness question, I think the foundations are laid. And so in our case in Ampersand, so we just launched in open beta, but we will integrate systems like World, for example. So I wasn't aware of AgentKit, so that's good to know. So we can integrate as someone creates an Ampersand wallet for their agent to tie in the World identity if they so choose, and then associate that with their kind of ERC 8004 reputation credential and broadcast that out. So that's something that's very easily integrated, and it's kind of what we built for is to bring in the best of breed standards so that people can utilize them. But also via our adoption and making it available for humans is what spreads this technology and allows it to become more of a standard.
Your dashboard it really does bring together Tawanda's quote about payment, problems are identity problems. Because for you, it's like for Ampersand, it's like payment solutions are identity solutions because they start to actually become intertwined. And that's, was that part of your decision early on to batch, 402? Like, can you tell us about why that was a first step for you before doing the identity integrations for Ampersand?
Yeah. Well, we started, at the fundamental layer of the X402 payments layer. We wanted to build the foundational aspects of it, and so identity was always on our roadmap, and it was kind of like going up the stack. So we started on the payments layer, integrating with X402, AP2, and then into the reputation layer with 8004. And now is the time that we integrate these identity standards like World and others that kind of make it feature complete for all the things that need to be there for to create trust in how agents interact.
I think I want to take questions from the audience, but I feel really excited about this moment because, you know, based on your quote here, that we really are at this moment where we can see, we saw from the prior panel that you saw this payment readiness. You know, we have a good pulse on where that's at. And now we're talking about identity readiness, but more importantly, we're talking about that intersection. And we can see, you know, even in your own career, Twanda, like how you move from, you know, formal, like this existing KYC centralization way of, you know, verifying identity, and now from where you're at World, and then even the way Ampersand has approached it from like payments and now, you know, then reputation and now identity. So you really see like two different approaches to the infrastructure, and World taking more of that hardware, you know, getting down to the root of trust there. So I'm curious from the audience, what has this brought up for you? What are your burning questions? And you, double points if you get to bring in sheeps into your question, the metaphor of sheeps. Okay, well, Pradnov, since we're in your house, I see you first, and you are our wonderful moderator for the first panel. So why don't you take it away with the first question? Better be good.
There's a mic coming.
Thank you for the panel. Really very interesting. I had a question for you, Taman. I see that World is trying to make a lot of real world integrations with applications like Tinder and others. Do you think crypto part of World is making it take a step back and getting higher amount of evaluation before any integration can be done? And do you think, given that this is such a novel problem, World ID, it did need crypto? Because if you see, there were lines in developing countries where people just had an iris scan, and there were there was a big line of people just doing ID and trying to make $80 to $100. So yeah, it's a little bigger question, but yeah, would be curious on your comment.
Yeah, I think there are 3 or 4 questions in there.
It's his house, so he can ask as many as he wants, okay? That's what he's thinking.
Sure. Right now, we see so much interest from large enterprises. You talk about the Match Group with the that owns all these large dating platforms, be it Tinder, Hinge, and others, and just really needs this. Like the sort of problems that they have are not ones that would be affected by whether or not we also solve problems in the crypto space. The reality is that if someone is finding it much easier to create 200 accounts, you know, some people have said to me, fraud as a service is something that they get overwhelmed with on some of these platforms, where someone's able to just spin up a lot of these accounts. We've heard this not just from the Match Group, but you hear it from Bumble, or where someone like spins up 200 accounts, sends links to OnlyFans to a lot of people who they match with and say, hey, let's connect over there in order to be able to get payments. This doesn't happen immediately, but they are able to, using AI, just have a really engaging chat back and forth and really believe that they're speaking to a real human. The problem that we're able to solve of being able to minimize catfishing, minimize financial romance scams is one that's agnostic to whether or not we also solve problems in crypto or these civil problems. So I grew up in Zimbabwe, which is in Southern Africa, and very often when we talk about the fact that companies in Silicon Valley don't build for the third world or emerging markets, it's an area of frustration. But I think I personally feel a lot of pride that World actually made a product that's available in Latin America, in Africa, in Asia, and parts of the world where these problems around being able to get financial access are real problems, and where people don't actually have the opportunity to get a lot of these. So there's a lot of pride to, like, obviously being a startup, there are a lot of things that we've learned on how we can approach these things better. But I think being able to create economic and financial infrastructure that's inclusive to anyone, regardless of their nationality in many ways, just because they're a unique human, is something that I think we should celebrate in many ways.
Can I chime?
Centralized identity is a privilege. Well, yeah.
Just access to financial infrastructure, I think, is something that should be available to everyone.
I just wanted to chime in and to the crypto aspect of it. You know, crypto, the reason oftentimes that we went through this experience is people ask, why do you need a token? Why do you need a token? It comes down to incentives. And so if you think world has created out of thin air this kind of like incentive mechanism, and they had lines of people signing up. So how else would you incentivize people to stand in line and do that without some kind of like reward? And otherwise they would have just literally had to helicopter dollars everywhere. But instead, if you like create this token, all of a sudden you have this like something of value that you created based on what you're intending to do with it. It's similar to how a company issues stock, creates value in what they're doing, and they can give it away. So effectively, they can spread around these incentives a lot more, get more people to sign up. So I view it as just a way in which they just want to get as many people, on to create that critical mass to where it becomes ubiquitous.
Yeah, I would add that, number one, a lot of people in emerging markets who were able to access the World Protocol were for the first time able to hold financial assets, and maybe they weren't able to hold them before, and so that's something that's useful. The second is there is a lot of value in just even morally in saying we're going to build financial infrastructure and allow people to have ownership or some sort of stake in it. It is true that some people might decide that they don't want to participate in that, but allowing people to hold crypto is very, very valuable in many ways. And if you look at the differences in the Argentinian economy before and after there was an openness to these different forms of financial instruments, I think the inclusivity of it was really valuable. I'd also would say, looking forward, for example, in the United States, there are many other ways that we allow large businesses. You can think about Uber or DoorDash that want to provide people with $15 discounts for the first time that they use their platforms. That's something that's an incentive for someone participating, but it's actually solving a problem for these large platforms that they don't want the same person claiming discounts or first-time sign-up discounts multiple times. And so now that we've built out the infrastructure and worked through the kinks, we're glad that you're able to actually do this token or asset distribution in a way that's useful to the large platforms, but also to the users. Does that help answer the 6 questions that you? Thank you.
We'll take this question from the person with the mic here, and then Junius will go to you.
Yeah, so totally building on what you're talking about. The question is around network effect, but I'm going to say actually around herd effect. I want the bonus.
Bonus point.
Lots of sheep.
But seriously, the question is not about technology. I feel that you guys are going to solve it, right? The engineers always figure this out, right? But it's more about adoption. And do you think something like World, the key to adoption is in the financial sector first, or in the social sector first? Like, how do we keep real people on X or Facebook or Tinder or whatever? Like, and how from a business perspective are you guys going to encourage the pull for identity rather than the push with incentives? And let's start with financial and social, and like, how do you get this adoption going?
Terrific questions. On the enterprise side, so I break it up into consumer versus enterprise. On the consumer side, the fact that there are these large platforms, including public companies, that are saying, as part of our product, we may require people to prove that they are a human, gives us a lot of confidence that there'll be a lot of adoption. But we're also just seeing the trend lines. In parts of the world where we've launched this, we see that really fast growth associated with that. That could be for social media, it could be for dating, as example, but it could also be for gaming. You talked about a slider that says, oh, like verified people only. This is an example of one of the features that we started seeing with some of the social media platforms that are using this, where someone might say, oh, I only want to see profiles that are verified humans, or I only want to allow posts on this platform if you are a verified human. And so we see a lot of this in consumer. You may see this in ticketing, for example, where in order to buy a ticket for a really high demand concert, you may be required, you may be able to get the tickets at the original price set by the artist. if you're a verified human, rather than having to go through a scalper who might be able to sell it to you at an inflated price. On the enterprise side, we just have a lot of businesses that are coming to us looking for solutions to these use cases. And so the adoption has never been, we've definitely seen astronomical growth before, and we've had multiple sort of layers of product market fit, but we definitely see the pain is becoming very concrete and very real to a lot of these enterprises and to individuals. And the fact that at this moment where agents are making it very obvious and visible to people, we're seeing a lot of interest. The weekend that Maltbook really took off was a very busy time for us, and our phones were ringing off the hook. So the adoption is definitely accelerating.
I just wanted to add too, this came up recently. I think I was on LinkedIn like in the last few days, and it's like, get your verified badge, and like, how do you verify? And then you've got to like upload your ID. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that, right? And then we have these like closed walled garden silos of like, now LinkedIn has all my information, and then X has their own verification system. Everybody has their own like unique kind of bad verification system. And what it's going to take, hopefully, is like, maybe it's a winner take all or winner take most, where maybe World ID becomes the thing that everybody uses that we all agree upon. And that's the thing about standards, is you never know which one is going to emerge as like the front runner.
Right, but the difference would be that instead of before where they hold everything, these companies, whoever
Precisely.
is that World would not hold on to everything.
Right.
It's a truly decentralized approach.
Right. So it would be wonderful if LinkedIn was like, okay, you know what? We're going to switch to using World IDs, and then because we're not going to hold the information, but that's good enough for us to say that you're verified as a human, and that's kind of what it's going to require.
Yeah.
World to like do all these deals with all these companies and get them to switch over.
We were at Davos on stage at the USA House, you and I, in January. And can you just share with the audience, what was the conversation? Because we have, a panel with Coinbase and with Cloudflare on there. And what came out of that conversation, in terms of, because Maltbook hadn't happened yet, OpenClaw hadn't happened yet. And so what has changed? Like, what came out of that conversation? And is there urgency? Do you sense, like, are things different? Like, help us understand what happened on stage.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That is kind of a mind blow. This was in January, and like
there.
Maltbook hadn't happened yet. Wow. Okay, yeah. So I was talking to Coinbase. We were on a panel with Coinbase and Cloudflare, and what has changed since that moment is now we have more people, obviously experimenting with agents, and there's more use cases. And kind of what I wanted to get to that sort of ties this whole thing in a bow is like why Cloudflare is super keen on X402 and Agentic Payments is that, Cloudflare is serving up a lot of internet traffic, right? And so where this came up is that there were all these like frontier models that scraped data off the internet basically for free. So content creators, they ingested all this data and trained all their models on it, right? And that's not really fair, right? And so Cloudflare, like originally X402 or the 402 payment required standard was this future dream where you had to pay per view of an article, right? Like instead of having to like sign up for a, New York Times account, put in your password for every, newspaper or magazine you read, this is just like, oh, I load this content, I pay a cent, great. So what this is enabling now is that content creators like New York Times can paywall agent. Like if you're a human, you're getting like the ad kind of revenue, and so you don't pay. But if you're an agent, it can tell if you're not verified. Okay, it's going to charge you like 1,000th of a cent via X402. So there's novel ways of new business models that hadn't been thought of before, but that are now coming to the fore because of this this new technology that we have. And that wasn't really like talked about. That the whole identity, and in that conversation we were just talking about these payment systems, payment rails, and utilizing, but we weren't really like honed in on this like proof of identity, proof of human.
The conversation has really evolved in the last 3 months, which
Yeah.
like I think it really hits on the whole, payment problems are identity problems. And we're finally at that intersection where it can come together. We have a question from the front row from Junius here. Can we get a mic to, oh, sorry. Okay, and then we'll have. Great question. This is really about, yeah, what are some like latent, sleepy, dormant protocols that could be brought back? Any thoughts? And that was a great call on citing X402's use of, yeah, that was a dormant one for a while till the Coinbase team rescued it.
There's no dormant protocol that immediately comes to mind for me that I want to bring back. But I do think looking forward, there are, yeah, like X402, for example, and others, the ones that are having to figure out this world of agents in real time is just ones that I think will separate out. We'll just see this pruning where some are going to survive, some won't. I've been on international standards body working groups that try to come up with standards. With all the debate and how slowly it takes to like agree on a single standard, I think it might take a while. So no immediate ones come to mind for me.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that because standards take a long time to evolve. And one of the ones that comes up a lot is like we're stuck with like SMTP for email, and we all know it's like a terrible standard. It could be improved, but yet it's ubiquitous and getting people to switch off it. There's been many attempts off it, and so there is inertia around changing the way things operate. But yeah, I'm not particularly aware of any kind of standards.
Yeah, I would actually interject and say what we're doing at the Advanced AI Society with our members and with our partners is bring back cryptography to say like cryptography is the underlying rails for this kind of independent provability. But what's crazy is that we don't have any agreement on what is a cryptographic verifiable proof. And this actually becomes so important. So this is what we're working on with our members, with EduNode, and others here on just what is a binary deterministic way, because it's actually urgent now because these are non-deterministic systems. But for us to move forward and for us to have any of this be deployable or insurable or auditable, we have to agree to what are the deterministic things of yes, no, does this thing have proof of control? Is this thing independently verifiable? Because anyone can claim it, right? And this is like world right now is doing great, but what if like there are 10 other companies who try and claim it? Then who's to say they actually have that? So this is something we're really trying to figure out, which is like, you know, an old cryptography has been around, but it's like, now I think this is the day for it to come back in this era. We need it even more now because you can't let your agents be free without any kind of cryptographic verification. I just can't even imagine.
Just a quick question. How many people have set up a world ID in the audience? Oh, yeah. It's pretty good, high percentage.
I would say that we had this problem with zero knowledge proofs for this research team at Google, and then like we have conversations with them at World, where the proof generation was taking something like 30 seconds, which for a product team was just like ridiculous. We're like, that's not good. And then after another year and a half, it came down to something like 6 seconds, and we're like, it's too long. A professor at a university found a paper from 1989 on old math that had been thrown away and been lying dormant, and used that to be able to bring it down to 1 second. That's an example where just like some old mathematics was discovered in a way that improved the product experience for zero knowledge proofs, which I think is useful.
We've heard this story with many of our members. They're bringing back these old cryptographic means and now applying it for an agentic world, rescuing these kind of mathematical works in all these universities. So that's a great example. With that, I don't think we have any time for questions, right, Michelle? Oh, sorry to all the people who had your questions lined up, but we're going into break. So you're going to have 10 minutes where you can speak to our panelists. And then, so for this panel, we've really figured out what happens, you know, why do we need this, you know, in worlds of why do we need to contain all of our sheeps, our, you know, random agents, and why do we have to put them in one place and put on the right controls? And why do we have to have, you know, build to prove identity, not just prove who you are, but prove the uniqueness? And the next panel, so you want to make sure you stick around, is we're going to start talking about, well, what are the various how is this going to look? It's not just going to be one player, but it's going to be different components of the stack. So we're going to hear about what a possible control plane could look like. And so make sure you stick around, and you're going to hear more from what Tawanda mentioned, which is Agent Kit. And even after that, you really get into the demo part. So thank you very much, and go search out for our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you.
So as promised, we're back. Michelle, can we start? Is that your official go? Okay,
Yeah, we can.
cool.
Let's go.
We are going. If you could close the door or help us with the sound is pretty loud in the hallway. Thanks. Thank you. Okay. So for those who just joined, I'm Trisha Wong, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of the Advanced AI Society. And we're an industry association of members who have technologies that are building out for independent verifiability over what AI systems do. And the reason why we need to have this is because we're in a world where agents are outnumbering people, and enterprises need to figure out, how do you build an AI stack where they can still control what is happening within their system. So you're going to hear from some of our members, but also really, new organizations here today that are also building out this proof of control ecosystem. And so we have 3 people here to continue the incredible conversation that we had from before with Tawanda and Rodrigo, where before we were talking about, why do we need identity? Why do we need these new approaches? So now we're going to talk about, what is this actually going to look like? And at the Advanced AI Society, we know it's not just going to be one solution. This is why we have industry association. And this is why we're going to hear from several of you all to figure out, what are the different components going to look like for building out this stack? And why might, one enterprise or one individual or customer or nation state, a buyer, would need something different? So first we have Colin Luca, who is the CEO of Basis Theory. And what they're doing is making sure their agent never touches your raw data. So a very different approach from even before. And I also think it's really cool that you built out the Agentic Commerce Consortium. So I think you'll have a lot to tell us about this intersection of payments and identity. And second, we have here Titus here from Civic. And Civic's principle is that essentially there's a new world where agents you don't actually call the tools directly, right? You call Civic. And so you're going to tell us what that looks like. And also you and I don't know we've ever crossed over at the World Economic Forum, but you've written many papers about this. So I know you've been thinking about the agentic world, much longer than many of us here. And then we have Andy Wong from World. So continuing the representation from World here to talk about Agent Kit, which was mentioned before, that allows you, that's going to be launching, is it already launched or? Okay, it's live. And really, we're going to talk about, well, what does it mean to allow agents to act on your behalf? So the quick recap for those who weren't here for the last panels, we were talking about really why do we need to be able to prove identity, but uniquely what World is doing is they're able to prove the uniqueness of an identity. So many systems can claim they prove identity, but what becomes even more important is to claim that you are unique, and you have a very specific approach around not just a one-to-one, but a one-to-n approach, meaning however many people are registered in your system, you will compare against everyone if they've been registered before. And then the second thing that really came out of the last panel that I thought was interesting is that, for the emerging stack, is that essentially identity is not enough. We heard about World's solution, but then we also had Rodrigo here from Ampersand talking about why you need a control plane for that, why you need to have a dashboard to actually ensure that, the control will be able to prevent, anything that could happen next, and for you to anticipate what that could look like. And so for the prior panel, I started with another story, but this panel, I want to frame up the story that I think is really relevant that happened more recently in the agentic world is the head of alignment at Meta, Summer Yue. Her job is literally to keep the AI stack safe. And she had essentially given OpenClaw access to her email. And she gave a really simple, instruction that was clear, which is said, hey, delete any emails that I don't need from my inbox anymore, but just don't do anything until I approve, like flag the emails, right? And then what happened was that the agent didn't listen. And she saw it in real time, deleting emails when she told it not to do that. And she had to literally run over and physically undo the machine and unplug it, right? And the reasoning why was she gave the instructions, but the agent's memory became compressed because her inbox was so big. And so agents can, can make mistakes. But this is, her email inbox. So you can imagine if you put it into like more mission critical things, like, I don't know, like managing nuclear site or managing your finances, there can be a lot of detrimental stuff happening. And so when this story really brings to life that this identity issue is real, but the identity was there in this case. Summer Yue is Summer Yue. That was her agent. That was her OpenClaw. That was her email, but the control was not there. The control was not there. There was no dashboard or interface to like do the stop. And so that's what this panel here is. We're here to talk about what does that gap look like? And when in a world where AI agents, not humans, are the main ones transacting, right? We're in that kind of that threshold right now. We're moving over, especially with the launch of Agent Kit. So I want us to really talk about and walk away from this panel with the idea of what does trust and accountability look like in a world where it's not just humans with agents, but humans with the agents that are transacting with each other sometimes on our behalf and sometimes on institutions' behalf. So I think the story really sets up well, Titus. You set up a skill after the Summer story at Meta. And this is a really good moment, I think, for you to tell us, what was the skill you set up? But before you do that, what is it that your company is solving for?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm the VP of go-to-market and developer relations at Civic. We've been in the space of like identity authorization, authentication for like more than 10 years now. Started off in like the Web3 space, did some decentralized identity work for a while. And then we brought all of that kind of infrastructure into the agentic AI space with the focus on the authorization and authentication piece, which relates to the story that you just heard. For me, when I saw OpenClaw, I heard from a bunch of friends of mine who were essentially dropping it on their MacBook and then giving it unfettered access to everything, including keychain. And I was like, you guys are crazy. That is like completely destruction event if something gets into my computer and starts reading all that stuff. I have like, I don't know, crypto keys somewhere in there. I have like access to my financial records. I have access to like my social security number somewhere there for like with my tax records and whatnot. Like for me, unharnessed AI with like authorization equals full access is something that is unworkable. So, and that's something we brought in Civic in our ethos, and the product that we spun up for this is a security layer for AI agents, where you define what level of access the agent has. And in this case, this could all have been prevented if the agent would have been set up with like email access with read only, right? Or with like label only, but do not delete. Because you can do that. Like there's protocols that allow you to do that. There's API calls that allow you to do that, or CLI calls that allow you to do that. But most agent harnesses kind of leave it up to the user. And I can tell you for sure that 99% of people do not know how to set these things up on their own. And if you end up vibe coding it, that's a mission critical piece of your infrastructure that is at risk at that point. So that's why we end up building a framework that separates that permission layer. Oh, actually, yeah, that's another important point. If you commingle your AI agent with the permissions, it will find a way to work around what you set as the guardrails, and then it will just go directly to the source and ignore your instructions. Whereas if you completely separate those restrictions, then your agent will hit a deterministic wall. So like it'll just like, this is blocked, this is not allowed. And there's no way around it because it all goes through a single checkpoint, right? Because if you give your agent options on how to access resources, it will go through the easiest path. Like we would do, like with like a road to somewhere. You take the quickest path.
And so in terms of what you're solving for is you're essentially saying from now on you would call Civic, right? Like what exactly is what look different?
It's like a proxy, right? Like
yeah.
If you want, like in a web traffic scenario, right? If you want your website to be protected, you're going through Cloudflare, right? That's the alternative. Like in this case, if you're in your agent to access your data in a protected way, you can choose to go through Civic as opposed to like kind of rolling your own and configuring the 50 different data connections that you would need to configure, or using different SDKs and different toolkits altogether.
Yeah, I think most people don't know this thing about commingling, and that's the source of many of the kind of stories that we're seeing here where agents are going, rogue and doing, well, we'll see it as them going rogue, but they're just kind of on their path that they think that it's just we know we see it as going rogue, but it's like we haven't set the wall up, right?
Well, yeah, because if your agent can access your config directly, and you're using the same agent for your configuration and your execution, then the risk of changing the configuration is very high. I think that's what I would like you to take away from this kind of intro piece.
Yeah. So, Andy, how does Agent Kit work in this? Oh, okay. Good. You have a mic. Okay, cool. How can you tell us, based on this kind of commingling finding that, we just learned about, but how does, tell us a bit about Agent Kit and tell us how you would, how do you factor in this commingling issue?
Yes, definitely. I mean, it's a great question. And I think as you're kind of hearing the story of both, the head of alignment at Meta and, a lot of our personal experiences, you'll find that kind of two trends are coming together, which is one, agents are extremely determined at finishing the tasks that we assign to them. And secondly, the capabilities of these models are rapidly increasing. And so the confluence of these factors creates situations where a lot of the systems that we have, no longer work properly in the ways that they might work for humans in terms of auditability, security, and compliance. And so the way we kind of think about how we build with agents is that firstly, we want World ID to be as horizontal as possible. So we don't believe that we will come up with the final standard. We don't believe that the final standard today might not even exist yet. And in general, we will be very flexible, very horizontal as the agentic space develops. But secondly, the kind of trend that we're seeing as well is a lot of these issues get caused because, one, models are non-deterministic, and secondly, context compacts. And so, you might say in your system prompt, don't delete my emails, or don't do this until you have my explicit approval. Well, you reach some edge case, context compacts, and that instruction is lost. And so
it happens pretty quickly for everyone. If you've used Claude over time, you
definitely
realize it does not listen to all your instructions because it can't keep this context.
Exactly. And so we're gradually seeing this kind of shift towards what we call durable workflows. So essentially defined code snippets where you have steps that you execute, and then you ensure that they're progressively happening, and if one fails, it can retry. And so you kind of can get around some of these issues. And so where World ID really fits in, though, is that you can kind of put this piece of what we're kind of playing around with the term of human in the loop, but to another extent, where you can require that in order for a specific action, whether it be, let's say, a very expensive purchase that you're about to make on a website, the ability to deploy production for a coding agent, accessing some sensitive data like PII or Social Security, you want to have some auditable trail, because these agents essentially will spin up sub-agents, will spin up their agents, those agents will disappear, and suddenly you have no idea what is happening, you have no auditability, and they're getting around whatever rules you may set. And so within these durable workflows, you can essentially require something like a World ID verification, where there's no way to get around it unless you are physically in presence of the World ID, similar to kind of what Tawanda was talking about earlier about this live presence that you're able to check. And so in specific for this example of auditability and compliance, this is where World ID is able to kind of insert itself.
So it's like real-time verification of the execution that cannot be tampered with.
Yes, exactly. And the cool thing is, you can either say it just needs to be a human that approves it. It might need to be Trisha who actually goes back and approves it. And then afterwards, you have a proof that is, permanently bound with this workflow. And so you can actually go back and see, hey, someone actually did approve it. There is, verifiable proof that we can access later on. And it ensures, we don't go away from the guardrails.
I think this is so important.
One more thing I want to add on auditability. I think the other issue that comes with using some of these agents, they produce a lot of output. So if you look at OpenClaude like console, what it produces in terms of like the bash records and everything, it's very hard to follow what tools were called and when and with what in what way, and use some sort of like a filtering system to take the noise out and then see like what exactly happened, and like is that tamper proof, is that timestamp, is that associated to a real identity, to a human being, or to something that happened in real time.
It was a lot to figure out because full transparency doesn't mean that we actually know what information to act on. It's like information, analysis paralysis.
Overload.
Yeah, overload. Because we don't understand, we still have not yet figured out what are the key delegation events and how that actually alter what an agent pathway can do. And so I'm curious, Colin, if you, as you know, someone who's been thinking about this world for a long time around commerce, and you've built out this whole consortium, and clearly you've been seeing this world coming, you know, what happens when an agent makes a payment? What do you see that needs to be set up for all of this to flow?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of what we just talked about. I think part of it is programmatically enforcing some of these guardrails and rules, as we just talked about. I think part of it is predicated on making sure, at least in the near term, there is some sort of verification, there's human in the loop. You know, so we primarily focus on traditional fiat and card-based payments. Sorry, I didn't wear a suit today, though, thankfully. But I think like the way the networks are thinking about this stuff is, you know, there's, you know, again, there's auditability of all the handshakes across the stack. There is human in the loop confirmation. There's device binding, pass keys, all of these different things. And so I think those all play a critical role in it. I think on the programmatic enforcement side, it is like, hey, I am delegating authority of this credential to you, agent, to go make this specific transaction at this specific merchant for this dollar amount, and then just making sure that's enforced. But look, I think the other like macro thing as we talk about all these different examples is just this idea of personal agency and accountability in all of this as well, right? Like I was listening to a podcast a couple weeks ago, and they were talking about the size of like tort law in the US and like just like the lack of personal accountability and agency here. And I do think like there is an onus on us here to like interact with these tools in a responsible way and know what we're dealing with. So like we can solve for the edge cases, we can solve for these. There's going to be other edge cases we don't solve for. And I do think it's important that we all take some like accountability.
So I love that you brought up the word accountability, and you are in the traditional, you know, you're looking at that threshold of the traditional payments world with agents. And I know what you just said made me remember that one of the key things that made credit card adoption successful was when credit card companies finally came together, because they were like, well, how are we going to get everyone to give payment online, right? Online credit card price. You probably know the story better than me, but I just remember the key insight I learned was when the credit card companies came together and they said, if there is a fraudulent payment, we will cover it.
Yeah.
And so what happens now in this world? If my agent buys something that I didn't approve, who covers it? Is it the merchant? Is it the credit card company? Like what party? Is it your company if you're the interface? Like
hopefully not.
You know, what's the equivalent? Because that's really allowed that hockey stick to take off, right? For the web.
Totally. I think there's this perception in the market that the reason the US is so card dominant is the rewards that we get from our credit cards. And don't get me wrong, that definitely plays a component in it. But I do think it's the consumer protections. And when people look at interchange and they're like, oh God, Stripe charges 2.9 plus 30 cents, that's really expensive. Sure, on the surface, that looks really expensive. I think when you peel back all the protections the consumer's getting, the merchant's getting, as we think about chargebacks, fraud protection, like it's actually a pretty good deal. I don't think a lot changes in this world, to be honest. I think I think like, you know, again, like, I give my kids my credit card all the time to go make purchases, right? And we were having this conversation earlier before, is an agent its own identity, or is it a proxy for us? And I think in the near term, it's a proxy for us. The same way my kids are a proxy for me. I hand my kids my credit card to walk into 7-Eleven. I hand them my credit card to go buy stuff online. Like that's where the personal agency and accountability comes in. And I do think we have existing rules around chargebacks that cover a lot of this. Now, again, can an agent go rogue? Yes. And can that be out of our control? Sure. But I think there's stuff we can do to control it too.
I mean, Thais, your product literally says you are a proxy. What are your thoughts on this? Would you agree or disagree that not much changes? Like,
I 100% agree. And the angle that I look at this through is more of a, like, sure, credit cards are great for the rewards and the like chargeback protection and my consumer protection. I'm not liable for any fraudulent transaction. And I think I would translate that in the agent world is more, is this agent revocable fully, right? Can I just like remove its ability to do things if it ends up not doing the things that I want it to do? Like in this case, if it starts deleting emails, how fast can I remove it from the equation? And in this case, like sure, pulling the plug on it makes sense if you're running on your Mac Mini at home, but what if it's in the cloud somewhere? What if you don't have like root access to that particular agent? What if you don't have a like kill switch built into your OpenClaw or whatever framework you're using? So that's why like for us, it made sense to separate the two layers, right? And give the kill switch the ability to sever the agent from the potentially damaging data. So if you're like attaching your production database, for example, with an agent that goes rogue or starts adding garbage data in there, like you can sever that connection. And I think that's the piece that like kind of resembles the credit card protections and revocability of that transaction.
I also think there's ways to adapt our existing infrastructure and systems without having to redo everything that can solve a lot of these problems, right? So let's take the rogue purchase transaction. Sure, if it's physical goods as opposed to digital goods, this is slightly more complex, but like certainly in a digital goods scenario or physical goods when it's being shipped out, like one easy solution is, hey, like let the purchase go through, but every hour or 6 hours, the human or whoever's behind the agent gets an email that says, hey, here's all the purchases your agent made in the past 6 hours. Do you approve all of those? That is an easy way to adapt all of our existing infrastructure and systems in place today to accommodate this new world. There's ways to batch transactions. So again, as we talk about X402 and microtransactions, yes, like this real-time exchange in a world where there's lack of trust might need real-time settlement. Stablecoins, crypto is great for that. But like if we're dealing with a trusted entity, like net 30 billing terms is an existing thing that happens in B2B services. We could do the same thing. We can batch these microtransactions. And so I think, you know, the most pragmatic approach to pushing all this stuff forward is not trying to reinvent the wheel necessarily, but adapt our existing systems to handle this new world. And I think there are easy solutions to that. But we might get some pushback here.
So I know Kevin's not here, so I will kind of be his advocate with X402.
Agent.
Yes, yes.
Representative.
And I guess the way I would think about it is I think you have to view this space as some sort of, you know, existing legacy payments, which is, you know, the way that we transact. You know, we buy things from, you know, online e-commerce stores, we buy things in large bulk, and kind of this new industry that is evolving, which is where X402 is trying to tackle, which is micropayments. And where do you use micropayments? Well, a lot of it is with, you know, access controls. And so an example of this would be, you know, you want an agent to go, you know, start building. And so I think it's very understood that tool use is one of the most, you know, powerful things that you can possibly have for an agent. And in those cases, it is very high friction to one, you know, set up an account, try something out. And like we said before, you know, agents really want to get the job done. And so in those instances, you know, they will use whatever tool is free and the lowest friction. And so X402 makes sense because suddenly you have a competitive advantage over your peers who are saying, you know, you need to first create an account, set up a credit card, set up billing. And you know, Kevin mentioned a few of the companies that they've integrated with, these like AI native companies, and those companies are seeing it as well. They're seeing that, you know, they are losing competitively to, you know, other companies offering similar products when they're building with agents if they are not offering these low friction free solutions, because agents will find you know, some other tool to use and then go ahead and bypass. And so I do think credit cards continue to have a place, and I think in like traditional commerce it makes a lot of sense. You know, you have some type of verification that covers a lot of it, and I think the way I think of X402 and kind of these new payment rails is it's really solving for a different use case where, you know, for humans we don't really need this like, you know, micropayment to try out APIs. It's totally fine for me to just go sign up for an account on like Auth0 or something like that, but I wouldn't be okay doing that, you know, for an agent who's trying to get a job done.
For a human-initiated world, and we're talking about an agent-initiated world.
But I think the question is how this all plays out. Like, is there going to be middleware providers that connect the agents with these B2B services? And are those going to just end up looking like marketplaces that exist today and serve that middleman functionality, and they handle all of the payments? And if that's the case, again, traditional infrastructure works just fine there, right? Is Stripe with Stripe projects just going to be the marketplace that connects agents to Okta and Twilio and AWS and all of these things? Absolutely. And is Stripe going to facilitate all of that in microtransactions? No, they're not. They're going to set up billing cycles with all of those, and they're going to handle the payments. So I agree. If this whole world turns into these individual autonomous agents that are going out and solving for these problems on themselves, and they find not only today's Okta, but maybe if you believe in the SaaS apocalypse, that like in 6 months, there's going to be 100 different Oktas. Any random developer could build their own, you know, identity management solution, and there's no trust there, and they go find them. Sure. But I don't think that's how it's going to play out. I think there's going to be centralized parties that play the role of the middleman there that handle a lot of this.
Yeah, so to add to that a little bit, I agree. There is a flavor of centralization that still needs to happen at this stage until we build that trust layer. The other angle that I like to think about this is not just from a security standpoint and like enabling transactions, but more, how do you know who is behind that agent? Who is that agent making the purchase for? Or who is that agent requesting the service for? So that the agent doesn't have to carry all of the context with it every single time, because processing that context costs money. And if you do it for like 100 people, sure, that's fine. But if you have 1 million customers or 100 million customers with agents requesting at the same time, it is much more efficient to have a record of like, hey, I've seen this agent before, or I've seen this person's agents before, therefore I have the profile of them. I can offer them a personalized experience. And by the way, those are the skills that the agent needs to connect into and then purchase what they need to purchase from us.
Well, I'm curious, as Kevin's agent or representative, what are your thoughts on this? Because we have essentially an emerging take here that breaks with the whole idea that there's going to be, a Web3 world of decentralization, and that's going to be the dominant way, right? I'm just painting one extreme, and then that has been the extreme and kind of the ideology that's been idealistic, that eventually it's going to become the new way of operating it. And some people see this moment as that time to come. But what we're hearing on the panel is a much more nuanced take. I don't think anyone's saying like that we're not going to have decentralization, but just that there's going to be the need for a flavor of centralization, and that these kind of, there's a lot of writing about SaaS products disappearing, that anyone can just spin up their own product now and personalize it. But what we're hearing is that it's not going to go away. It's just there's going to be a shift in what these kind of middle players do. What do you think?
Yes.
As yourself and as the rep of.
I feel like I'm playing the the other side here, but to keep it interesting as well. I mean, the way I think about it here, it kind of boils down to a few pieces. So, I mean, I think firstly, there's kind of this idea of like agents, of course, representing you, being a proxy of you, and there's a lot of use cases for that. But if you kind of think about like Moltbook, and what was really exciting about that was that they weren't really proxies of you, right? Like your Molt was not posting necessarily like the types of things that you would enjoy. It was just posting random things, and it looked like we had these sentient agents. And so I guess like kind of on that side, I do believe. I mean, if you look at the progress of acceleration in compute, you look at the scale of Mythos, you see Blackwell chips coming online, further NVIDIA chips coming. I think we're adding like 10 gigawatts of electricity or of compute capacity every single year. Elon has plans for terawatts. Like the acceleration of this is going to be immense. And I don't think it's unreasonable to expect that we will have more of these autonomous actors. And even today, right, when you do like a coding a coding problem, right, it's not necessarily true that that agent is acting in a proxy of you and like thinking in the way that you do. It's just using whatever tools it wants to get it solved. Like I'm not thinking in the moment like, oh, I want to use Supabase to build my backend sometimes, and it just might suggest it. And so in that sense, I think there is still a lot of room for these like tool discoveries. I think enterprises are realizing that that is happening. And then I would say, secondly, on the centralized world, I don't think like things like Stripe projects are bad ideas. I think there will always be a place for them. And I think certain developers will like those patterns. I think the interesting tension will be is like what level of coordination can occur there. At least like the conversations that we've noticed with enterprises is that like everybody wants to own that central choke point. And so there's kind of maybe some counter positioning there as well of like, I want to own it, you want to own it, and we all need to work together, but nobody really kind of figures it out. And some of these more open protocols can win. So I would say that is the argument for decentralization. But like I said, I think this space is still very early. There's bifurcations across everywhere. People are using agents in wildly different ways, and we'll kind of see.
Well, I think it's interesting that you brought up that there's going to be more compute being added. And one, Christian Catalini, I don't know if any of you all know his work, but he's a professor from MIT, and he just came out with a paper that talks about how as the cost of compute goes down and decreases, there's the cost, the need for verifiability is stable. And then there's this big verifiability gap, right? And so there's going to be a need, like, yes, cost of compute is going to go down, but in the world where we have more and more agents, there's going to be a whole growing class for the need for verification, where verification becomes the moat, not compute. So I just want you to like hear that thought for a moment, is that it's not, the moat is not in compute, it is in verification, in which it's in all of the technologies you're hearing from World, from Civic, from these tools here. And so I'm curious from all of you, especially from Colin, what are your thoughts on this when we're talking about like the need for verifiability? What is, basis theory, the need for provability and verifiability? What is a tool like Civic? And also, of course, world like AgentKit. What is the role of this in a world where compute costs go down? Like help us understand the macro trend of where your tools fit in that.
So I don't know how it's going to play out. I can tell you, like, I definitely am in the camp of I hope it plays out in a decentralized way, or at least in the form of some unified spec or protocol. I think you're spot on. Like everyone always wants to own the front door, and your comment is spot on. Everyone wants to own the verifiable piece or the identity piece because that is the front door to all of this. I think the question is, in today's world, again, like I'm coming at this from the traditional card world, Visa has their trusted agent protocol, MasterCard has verifiable intent, and they're all going after this KYA thing. But the question is like, who's the arbiter of truth? Who's the arbiter that says good agent or bad agent, right? Like, I don't think we want to trust Visa with that. I don't think we want to trust MasterCard with that. Those are inherently competing networks. Therefore, they're by default these siloed organizations. So like, how do you combine the two? The Google example, how do you know it's me between these two different things? And so I hope it plays out in the form of a spec or protocol. Speaking again from, I feel like an agent for the card industry here. That's not how this has played out, right? If you look at tokenization in the card world, there's this idea of point-to-point encryption, end-to-end encryption. That's not how it played out online. Stripe has their own tokenization algorithm. Adyen has theirs. Visa has theirs. MasterCard has theirs. None of that talks to each other. And so this tokenization is a data security mechanism that's been weaponized in a way where like we're not actually making the industry any more secure, because as we share data from party A to party B to party C, from Stripe to Adyen to MasterCard, it's all predicated on detokenizing and exposing the plain text data along the way. And so we're just increasing the surface area or threat vector in that world. And so I think if tokenization didn't play out in a way where all these parties can talk to each other, I'm not sure identity or verifiability is going to play out that way, but I hope it does.
Well, I hope we're playing a role in that for building out the proof of control, standard, and also in organizations like yours, the consortiums, where I think this is the moment. We have a small window to catch.
I appreciate the vote of confidence, but little old basis theory is probably not going to pull it off, unfortunately.
It's like a
but like, I hear you. No, totally. But like basis theory and our 30 early stage companies, and we're partnering closely with the networks, and I hope we can push it forward. And I'm trying my best to. I'm also.
That's why we have organizations like Linux Foundation here, and we have decentralized trust, where it's like I think we
100%.
have a window. This is why the Agentic AI Foundation, like we have not, we have this window right now to determine where this can go, where if we can just agree to the underlying plumbing, just like we did with the early internet and how we won the browser wars and we run the server wars, we just lost the social media wars, which we're still dealing with, but we have a window to kind of reclaim some of these things so that we can actually fight it out on the market, right? So what's your take?
So I think plumbing has become more accessible and cheaper versus what we saw at the early days of internet. So we have less of a need for a unifying protocol or for decentralized networks that are like in agreement with all the players.
Right.
But rather, how do you build the most efficient pipe for that part of your house that needs the piping? Or like the most efficient way for the agent to slide into whatever goal it has in your existing trusted execution environment. And I say that because I want to offer almost like a counterpoint to the auth tokens and tokenization, but like from an auth N and auth Z tokenization perspective, we have a perfectly working system there where we can authenticate and authorize a specific action by a specific entity in the virtual world, which, by the way, can be a human or cannot be. It can be an agent. But they would go through the same auth N and auth Z process to access a said resource, which in that case could be the purchase, it could be access to an API, it could be access to a command or to a database, to a table, a subset of my emails or whatever you have protected behind that wall. And the ability to spin up that easily, quickly, and securely, I think that will lead to the winner and the winners in this space. Because it's like we all have a lot of flexibility now because of like Cloud Code and Codex and all these like coding agents. We can basically build our own plumbing.
Well, when we're talking about plumbing, before we take a question from the audience, is that one, I want to just say we have three different, solutions, right, or products on stage. And I'm curious just for you to actually now look at each other and talk to each other, because what I see is a potentially, emerging stack. We also have Ampersand from the previous panel, which is like, there's three different products that not necessarily competitive, but we're talking about, a world where it's a composable world where we can give a client potentially a mix of solutions depending on the industry or the sector or the use case. But here World is offering, looking at what is a unique human, right? And then you have Agent Kit now that allows that human delegate authority to an agent. But Civic, what I understand is that you're sitting between the agent and the world. And then with basis theory, you're ensuring that the agent doesn't actually touch the raw data, right? You have through this tokenization method. So how would you all see your, like a potential bundling of like a recipe or stack for enterprise solution working together? Like I'm curious just how you would talk about, and let's not forget Ampersand, who is here too, like as the control planes, right? For the visibility. Yeah, how would this work together?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. And I think it's actually boils back to how we kind of think how proof of human will fit into the agent stack. So first and foremost, we are trying to be as agnostic as possible. And I think, this is a great point that you raised earlier where, everyone tries to build their own standard. Everyone wants to own the front door. Everyone wants to, push a very, very opinionated take. And so the way we build, the way we always build is, a protocol, very open. We will slot into, other protocols as well. And, we will kind of be wherever the developers need. The second point, kind of like how these things all fit together. Well, the way we think of proof of human is, very similar to the way we pitch proof of human to enterprises today, to what Tawanda will have said, is that, at the end of the day, you have these additional layers on top, but you still need to have some element of uniqueness because the ability to do abuse of like making multiple accounts, being able to make fake KYCs and being able to make kind of these alternate identities that, eventually get proxied through to these other systems, will not be effective in a world where we have, magnitudes more of these intelligent agents or intelligent bodies, operating on the internet without something like proof of unique human. And so underpinning all of these, as the root kind of layer of trust, World ID can provide, a high level of integrity.
Yeah, I think from a Civic perspective, like we're an MCP server with MCP servers, and we enable kind of that type of piping of the connection. But I think the question is what happens if you spin up 3 or 4 different accounts because you want to connect to different, like with different email addresses, and you have a personal one, a work one. How do you prove that that's the same person, right? And that's, I think, where World can play a role. Is like, do you have some sort of identifier? Is there another MCP call that you make to add that identifier to your ultimately like end goal transaction that you want to make? And then on the payment side, we don't have any payment scope in that MCP proxy itself. So adding a layer, we could, exactly. Like we're adding a layer of like, hey, this is now coming with a payment, this request to this particular endpoint. It could be X402, it could be a credit card transaction, it could be anything essentially from that perspective, as long as there's value attached to it that is verifiable.
And you're not working with World yet either, right? So these are 2 cases that could legitimately be implemented in the real world for
Yeah, I think, we were talking before this about this trend of the convergence of payments and identity. And I think, your question to the 3 of us is exactly that, which is WorldCoin can do the identification and verification of the human. I can, within my vault, nest that under a payment credential, or at least associate it with a payment credential. We can pass it to Civic and can go out and execute for us, right? Like that's a pretty awesome chain right there.
Yeah, and I don't think we would have heard, like, exactly to your point, Titus, is that the plumbing is more accessible and it's more democratized, that fundamentally these are companies that are composable, right? We have worked enough on the interoperability, even though we may not agree to like a specific standard, but there's enough there that these toolings, we can start to create this kind of bundling, which I think we're going to move into that world. I'm biased, but I think for any kind of enterprise sales has always been the buyer buys products, no, solutions, they don't buy products. And they're going to want it customized, for them. So I think this is a great kind of flavoring you see here.
And one more thing to add, I think when we're talking about like bigger players, enterprise, bigger use cases, is like, how do you guarantee the security layer of that? Like if you build your own pipes, are they SOC 2 compliant? And then you have to answer that question to your CISO or to your security team. So I think from that perspective, I think there will be a layer of like build your own pipes and kind of put together solutions on ad hoc, right, for a smaller use case. But the more you move up to like, oh, there's like millions, billions, trillions of dollars of value at risk, you will want to play with something that's safer.
SOC 2 is insufficient for that kind of world. You need to have independent verifiability. You have to have that proof of control there. There's no way to avoid it into that world. So I think we're at that threshold. Do we have time for questions, or do we have to wrap up? We can do a question. Is there a burning question from the audience? As you're seeing the future stacks emerge and future solutions, does anyone have one? Or shall we? We have one question. Yes, please. A mic for you.
Thank you all very much for presenting today. Not only have I learned a lot, but you've also helped to validate some of the concepts that I've been using for quite a while. And in regards to concepts that are been using for quite a while, protocols, sometimes what's old is new again. Policy is code. What I'm kind of hearing in regards to rules-based engines for agentic AI is policy as code and potentially using service meshes as a means of opening a proxy for authentication and authorization. Can anybody on the panel kind of share their viewing points on anything that's older, that's already established, that may potentially be newer and more relevant with agentic AI? Thank you.
I look to Colin.
I was going to be the last one to go. Yeah.
No, you're working in an old world. You're at that intersection of traditional payments and like modernizing.
Let me
right?
lick my wounds and think about it.
I mean, I can try maybe to answer that. You can think of maybe YAML schemas could be one in that direction. I mean, ultimately, there's a lot of text-based ruling that's happening in the agentic space right now. I think that can get even like more abstracted. I think compression is underused right now in this space, like having compressed rules in a way that the agent can still read them, like the whole kind of Silicon Valley middle out algorithm from the show. So
the what algorithm?
Middle out.
Middle out
show.
algorithm.
Yeah.
Ooh. We're getting really specific. Well, why don't we have that conversation afterward?
Absolutely.
Or do you want to take it?
It's above my pay grade. I can tell you that off the bat.
Someone has asked a question that we'll talk about afterwards. So with that, we're going to wrap up. Thank you so much for asking the hardest question that our panelists cannot answer, and they were going to need a moment. But I think what is really exciting here is that, I really feel the energy in that, we have this world is not yet built and has not been figured out, but you're seeing, these companies that are emerging as these potential solutions that we're going to see, for small, medium-sized businesses to enterprises. And I think what's really important is that these are all composable tools. And so talk to your panelists afterwards, but I think you can see here really it brings together what Tawanda brought up earlier, which is that identity problems are payment problems. And you're also seeing that these payment solutions are also identity solutions. And so with that, Michelle, do I hand this over to you? And yes, there you go. Thank you. I think we leave. Okay.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Ian. I do developer relations at World Foundation. I've had a great time seeing all the panelists today, but I know it has been a very jam-packed afternoon, so I want to try and keep this a little on the shorter side. I feel like a lot of people here are probably starting to get hungry, want to start just doing more networking instead of hearing people talk. So I also selfishly want to keep this short because I want to watch the splashdown of the Artemis 2 team. I'm glad somebody gets it. And I was thinking about that, and I realized that's actually a really important point to make in the context of everything we've been discussing today. Because Artemis 2 is very important to me. It is the mission where humans have been furthest away from the Earth that they ever have been, and made a flyby of the moon. And there's something extremely beautiful and poetic and human about that. It's very important to me that I hopefully get to watch that splashdown. And I realized that I didn't care at all about the Artemis 1 splashdown, other than like, checking a few hours later to see that it had happened. And fundamentally, I think this encapsulates why I work at World and what I see World's mission as, is that everything we do in space relies on an incredible amount of amazing technology. There's so much engineering and human ingenuity behind it. But that tech operating on its own to go around the moon or to Mars, all of these things are great. But it means a lot more when there's humans in it. And that is, at the end of the day, what I think all of tech should be about. This is why I work at World. AI is amazing, can do many, many great things, but it's very important that there is a human behind it and that it benefits humans and that it is a part of the human pursuit of greatness. So now that I've made that point, to fulfill the demonstration part of this title, I want to actually do an orb verification and show how quick and easy it is to get verified at the orb. So you can use World ID and Agent Kit and a lot of the things that my colleagues have discussed today. So if I have a volunteer, you're the volunteer, Trisha. We're just going to do an orb verification and show how quick and easy it is. So you have World app installed on your phone? Amazing. So if you open up World app, you'll check the box and hit sign up. You'll want to create an account. So if you tap the back button, tap the screen, just check box there, sign up. So your World ID is actually being created on your phone right now. It's not derived from your biometrics in any way. You can secure your account with the passkey. Yep. This makes account recovery much easier in the future. You have to type in your 1Password. That's on 1Password, not us. You can skip this step if it doesn't work.
No pressure.
That's probably a good thing. It is your 1Password login. Yes, date of birth is required to make sure that, we're not verifying people under the age of 18. There's a lot of laws around that we not just have to, but want to comply with. That step is optional. That just makes it easier to find, your friends, relatives, etc. in World app, specifically for the wallet feature and for chat.
Oh, yeah. I can get a Sephora voucher and a DoorDash voucher? What is this?
This is human benefits.
I'm not going to get distracted. Not do the DoorDash one. Okay.
All right, so if you tap where it says verify, you'll tap I am with an orb. And then you'll actually tap show QR, and you'll show this QR code to the orb. This opens an encrypted communication channel between the orb and your phone. So now you can step in front of the orb, just keep your phone unlocked. You look at that mirror in the orb. You might need to hold your hair out of the face as well. If you can try to hold your eyes open as wide as you can so that the orb can see the iris. Yes, you do. But you are now done with the orb. So the orb just did the scan check to make sure you're actually a human. It took a photo of each eye, a photo of the face, calculated the iris code. That data was signed and encrypted by the orb, is being transferred to your phone, and then it is completely deleted from the orb.
Yeah. Wait, so did it prove that I was unique?
So the uniqueness step happens next. There will be one more step in World app for you. It's going to ask you to take a photo of your face with your phone's camera. This is to make sure that face off works so that World app can enforce that the person who actually verified at the orb is the one using that World ID in the future, right? Preventing you from verifying and handing your phone off to someone else or anything like that. And after that, this is where it's checking that you're unique. So the iris code is split into multiple secret shares. Each goes to one member of a multi-party computation system, and without any of them ever learning the iris code, it's able to check that you are unique from everyone else who's ever verified at the org.
Like what, 18?
Right around that, yes. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but it does go up every day. Yeah, this step can take a minute or two. It's very computationally expensive, but necessary for ensuring the privacy of that data. But that was the whole process of verifying at the org, actually. Super, super easy. And I guess since we've got, I think, about 5 minutes before the reentry starts for Artemis 2, if there's any questions in the meantime, I'm more than happy to hear some of them. Hopefully answer them too. When you see the screen that says welcome to world, you know it's done. Yeah. So if there are any questions, or if there aren't, I guess everyone did a great job on their panels today. In that case, thank you all very much.
Thanks, everyone. There is food and drinks out that way.